Hello, good morning. Hi, David. Um, I hope you guys are well. Um, we have so much court to do, and I'm late. I really wanted to start at 9. My sister just called me. It's a whole thing. The world is crazy, and we have so much to catch up on. We are like a day and a half behind. They are starting Wednesday court now. We still have to finish Monday. We still have to watch Tuesday, which is only a half day, which is good. But oh my goodness, we have so much to do. We have so much to do. Let's get this video out and shared and talked about. I don't know how technology works. Lily knows the news. So okay, let me get this on. Great, lovely, awesome. If you haven't already, please subscribe. That would be fantastic. I'm starting fresh over here. And if I look a little funnier than normal, it's because I haven't turned all the lights on yet. Because it's just a little early for that. You know, it's just a little early for all of the lights. So let me get this up and get this up and get this up and get this up. Okay, so we are just going to jump right in to finishing up day 5. We still have a good chunk to watch. Where are we? That is a great question. We have Paul Gallagher on the stand, and we have Paul Gallagher on the stand, who is a lieutenant, sergeant, I don't know, a higher ranking police officer who has been on the force been on a force in the area, in the Boston, Massachusetts area for over 30 years. And he has never pulled evidence, like worked a crime scene. Like I'm sure there's been crimes in snow, but he's never done like the evidence gathering of a crime scene in the snow before. And he was the one who physically used the snowblower, or not snowblower, the leaf blower on the snow to reveal the red spots in the snow, which have at this point in time of the story have not been fully identified to be blood. It is highly assumed for it to be blood. And the way red meets with liquid and white, it turns into pink. That was a thing. We have found out that the neighbor across the street of 34 Fairview Road was actually a lieutenant for the police department as well. So that was really exciting. Lieutenant Tully, I believe. I think it was Lieutenant Tully. I'm pretty sure that's correct. So this is a neighborhood full of police officers. So that just reassures me that everyone who was called to this address, every police officer, every EMT that has been, I would say, serving on the force for at least a couple of years would know that this is the home/neighborhood of police officers. So, yeah, we had conversation between the defense and the judge about newly found photographs of Kitty McLaughlin, who was the female EMT who was putting up a big fight and had her voir dire and was not getting she wasn't giving up the information. She was the one who was being asked if she was close friends with Caitlin Alden, or excuse me, if she was friends with Caitlin Alden, and she kept redefining friends as close friends or acquaintances. There was either close friends or acquaintances, nothing in between, nothing to be titled as friend. There have been new photos given to the defense. Now, this is going to be a like a Rule 14 questioning sort of decision making between like the both sides and the judge, mainly the judge. She has final say, of course, in the court about whether they are admissible or not in the trial, because this is brand new I wouldn't, I guess, evidence. They are photographs. One of them was a photograph from a baby shower about 6 months before John O'Keefe was found unresponsive, unconscious in the snow. And it is of Katie McLaughlin and Caitlin Alden at the same baby shower. So they were friends. No, they may not have been close friends, but they were friends. And she was able to scoot and skate around, defining her relationship with Caitlin as friends. I don't know why. I don't know why it was sort of, they just couldn't find the right question to nail her down to the fact that she is friends with Caitlin Alden. And they couldn't nail her down on getting a reason from her why her relationship was not disclosed early on in the investigation, or even just kind of discovered early on in the investigation. So it's very, very interesting. We have a police officer here who is being reamed out by the defense team about his fantastic idea to use the neighbor, Lieutenant, I believe it's Tully, his red Solo cups to collect evidence. So we're going to see a little bit more about that, I believe, probably today. A photograph that I saw is going to show you exactly what happened with those red Solo cups, because when you just say red Solo cups don't have lids. They don't have lids. So how are you collecting evidence? How are you marking evidence? How are you labeling evidence on a red Solo cup? How are you getting it back to the station? All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let me get my sound in and let's talk. Let's chit chat. Let me get my shoes off because we have a long day. All right, this is exactly where we left off last time. And I believe they were taking a little bit of a conversation break.
Where? It's on floor 1A.
All right, we're going to take a 5-10 minute break.
All right. Perfect.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about.
Here we go.
Thank you. Go back in session if you see it.
Good morning, Ray.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All my systems are down.
You had started to tell us who at the scene who handled those solo cups. Can you describe that for us, please?
I handled them to the scene. Sergeant Lang collected the samples.
Under your supervision?
Yes.
Did anybody other than Sergeant Lang handle those solo cups?
No.
So once they were in his possession, they remained in his possession until they were booked into evidence?
They were bagged, placed in Sergeant Lang's vehicle. He transported them to Camp Police Headquarters, transported it into the office, and logged them in as evidence. Yes.
Did you watch all that happen?
I did not.
You did not. So you're presuming those next steps after he was out of your view?
I know that because he told me so.
Well, that's hearsay.
You cannot testify to something you did not purposefully see, like actually see.
You observed.
I did not observe him place it in evidence. Yes.
At what point did you lose sight of those solo cups?
When I got in my vehicle to leave the scene.
So once the solo cups were in his, you saw them go in the brown paper bag.
That's correct.
The evidence bag. Then you saw them go in the truck.
That's correct.
And at that point, you don't have any personal information about what happened to solo cups. Personal observations.
Until I removed them from temporary evidence, I have no recollection. Correct.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about once you were inside the home. You've already indicated that you did not seek a search warrant. You did not seek consent to search the home, correct?
That's correct.
Did you look around the house for any sign of a struggle or a fight?
No.
Did you go to the basement at all?
No.
Had you ever been in the house before that morning at 9 a.m.?
Never.
Sorry?
Never.
Okay. Did you go to the backyard?
No.
Did you personally observe whether or not that house has a bulkhead door that services the basement?
I have no idea.
Did you photograph any portion of the house?
The front of the house.
Sorry, bad question. Good point. Inside the house, did you photograph any part of the house?
No.
Did you have a cell phone with you?
Yes.
Has a camera on it?
Yes.
You could have photographed it, you chose not to.
I would have needed permission or a warrant.
And you got neither.
That's correct.
You sought neither.
That's correct.
Did you photograph any of the individuals in the home?
You sought neither
Some
permission
forensics or anything like
nor
that? No.
a warrant.
Did you or Sergeant Lank separate the witnesses before they were interviewed?
There was only one witness he was interviewing,
Who's that?
Jen McCabe.
Where was everybody else in the house?
I believe they were all in the same area, the kitchen. I believe it was the kitchen.
Those individuals were not taken to a
Oh,
different
no.
part of the house.
You do not
Not that
separate
I'm aware,
them.
no.
They were allowed to communicate with and among one another.
Sure, yes.
And I think you already answered this, but I'm going to ask it just to make sure I'm clear. None of that.
This is so
interview with Jim McCabe
disappointing.
Was not recorded in any way. Audio or video recorded.
Correct.
How long were you inside the house for that interview?
10 minutes, maybe.
Other than Jim McCabe being interviewed, were any of the other witnesses inside that house asked any questions by Sergeant Lank or by you?
No, not that I believe so. Not that I recall.
Were you the person on February 1st who gave access to the Massachusetts State Police to the Sally Port?
I was probably one of them. The Sally Port doors can only be opened by dispatch.
Did you approve or authorize those doors to be opened for purposes of MSP coming in, Massachusetts State Police coming in and processing that vehicle?
I don't know if I specifically did it at that point, but I certainly would, yes.
You knew that the vehicle had been in that Sally Port since January 29th in the afternoon, correct?
I don't believe what point I knew it was in the Sally Port, but I did know it was there for days before, yes.
Okay. And if it had been there from January 29th to February 1st, that's 3 full days.
That's correct.
From the time that SUV arrived and was situated in the Sally Port, how many people had access to that truck, that SUV?
How many people had access to the Sally Port, or is that one, are you asking one
I'm
of
going to
the,
say
I would say the entire department.
dozens,
Yes, correct.
hundreds,
No, we're very small.
Dozens of
So
people
so we're
can go
probably
in and
45.
out,
45.
touch.
And just about
Move.
everyone, 45 people would have access
Correct.
to that Sally Port and that SUV had they wanted to.
Had they wanted to, yes.
And that 45 doesn't include Brian Higgins.
It probably does, but he would have access as well.
Thank you. Those same individuals that would have access to the SUV inside the Sally Port, very obviously, would also have access to anything else that had been placed in the Sally Port along with the SUV, correct?
That is correct.
Did you photograph or cause to be photographed that SUV immediately upon its arrival into the Sally Port on January 29th?
I wasn't working, no.
Did anybody, to your knowledge, seek to photograph the condition of that vehicle immediately when it arrived at the Sally Port?
I wasn't there, I can't say.
Oh, so
You've certainly
now
never
you
seen
can't
any
say,
photographs
even though someone
on
told
January
you.
29th, immediately when that SUV was brought into the Sally Port, right?
Other than our evidence, I haven't seen any evidence in this case.
You indicated that Massachusetts State Police was having some difficulty removing the light. We saw a short snippet of the video, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Who made the decision to even remove the taillight? Was that Canton PD or was it Massachusetts State Police?
That would have been somebody within the state police.
Okay. And then you contacted Officer Wanless to actually facilitate the removal of that light, right?
I contacted dispatch to ask Officer Wanless to return.
And you knew at the time that Officer Wanless was a sworn Canton police officer.
That's correct.
But Lieutenant Gallagher, you told us just a few minutes ago that you and the chief, actually you and the chief agreed that the Canton Police Department was completely recused from this case in the investigation based on a conflict of interest, correct?
No, you're spinning it. What I said was from participating in investigative interviews.
So they could take part, Canton Police Department could take part in any other part of the investigation, according to you, with the exception of investigative interviews?
We can open doors, we can facilitate things, yes.
Remove taillights?
There's nothing, no, yeah, if it's an assist round peg, round hole, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so in other words, Canton Police Department, notwithstanding the conflict of interest, was still allowed to participate in the investigation of the Karen Reed matter.
There was no conflict of interest. I said appearance of conflict of interest, so we have to be careful. I didn't believe there was a conflict. I honestly believe we could have investigated this case,
Well,
but it wasn't the appearance of such a conflict.
You also didn't believe that there was probable cause to search the house either.
I know that.
That answer will stand. It's stricken and so is the question.
So Canton Police
Things are
Department
getting a
was, in fact,
little
at your authority, given
energized.
permission to manipulate that light in terms of pulling it out of the SUV, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Canton Police Department was allowed to facilitate the removal of that light.
Yes,
And during the course of the removal of that light, that taillight was broken, correct?
that's correct.
And shattered.
Yes,
Parts of it that were falling under the ground.
I don't think there was anything falling on the ground at that point.
So now we do have evidence that
Hold on. I
that
need to go
taillight
back.
in some way, shape, or
I think there was, that's correct.
and during the course of the removal of that light,
Sorry.
that taillight was broken, correct?
That's correct.
And shattered.
Yes.
Parts of it that were falling onto the ground.
I don't think there was anything falling on the ground at that point.
So now we do have evidence that
Okay.
that taillight, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, was broken or broken more once it was inside the Sallyport in Canton PD's custody.
Yes.
You're gonna have to rephrase that. I don't understand the broken more part.
During the removal process, that
Mhm.
light was broken even more.
No.
You just said it was. You just said that during the process of moving the taillight, it was broken.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Oop. Look at Karen's face. Oop. If she
Just take a
was
look at that
framed,
photograph and tell me if you recognize it.
I don't recognize the photographs. First time I've seen it.
Do you recognize what's
she's
depicted in the
enjoying this.
photograph?
If she was
It's a
framed,
broken
she's
taillight.
enjoying this.
Does that appear to be the taillight that was removed during the process that we saw on the video just a few minutes ago under direct examination?
I can only assume it is. I've never examined the light.
So you can't assume. So can you answer the question, Lieutenant?
No.
You don't recognize it?
No.
Okay, and were you, I didn't see you on the video, but it was a very dark video. Were you there?
Yes, I'm in the gray shirt.
Can't
Okay.
keep his.
Were you there as Officer Wanless was actually removing the taillight from the vehicle?
He's
I'm
having
not
a
sure.
hard
I'd
time
have to watch the video again.
answering.
Okay. Do you recall if pieces and parts were being broken off and shattered while he was removing it?
Not at all.
For sure. He's
Yeah,
having a
but-
hard time
Yes.
answering for sure. I'm having a Pop-Tart for breakfast, if anyone
Were you the
cares.
person who actually recovered? I think you did answer this. You were not the person who knelt down and actually recovered the blood droplets.
Correct.
That was Sergeant Lyon.
That's good.
When you gave the, sorry, let me rephrase that. Was it you or Sergeant Lang that put the solo cups into the evidence bag?
Sergeant Lank.
Was that in your presence? Yes. Okay. How long before, after he put the solo cups in the evidence bag, did he put the evidence bag in his truck?
Seconds, less than a minute.
And then how long did the truck sit there until he left or you left and you were no longer able to observe it?
He left immediately.
You were at the location the location of the Sallyport on February 3rd. You've already testified to that, correct?
No, I testified February 1st.
I'm sorry, my mistake, February 1st. You also indicated that at your direction that Sergeant Lang booked the solo cups into the evidence locker.
That's procedure, yes.
Right. I understand the
That's
procedure. I'm
procedure.
asking if he actually did it.
Yes.
Okay, did you see a log of that?
Excuse me?
Did you see a log
log.
of that?
I saw the police report,
Which police report?
the original call.
Okay. And in that police report, he indicates that he took the solo cups back to Canton Police Department and booked them in evidence, right?
It was given a property number and assigned to temporary evidence.
And when something is given a property number, is there an officer working that property area to assign the property numbers?
No, the officer placing the property into evidence assigns the property number himself.
I see. So that officer would assign a property number and physically place that into temporary, what's it called again?
Temporary evidence until the evidence officer takes custody of it.
Okay. Did an
Temporary
evidence officer
evidence.
actually take custody of these items?
No, because it was being transferred to the state police, so it wasn't going into our permanent evidence locker.
So where did those cups sit for the 3 days between January 29th and February 1st?
In a refrigeration unit in temporary evidence.
And is there a log to sign in and sign out to make sure that the chain of custody of items like this are maintained?
The evidence officer keeps that log, yes.
Is there any log, Lieutenant Gallagher, of these items being booked into the temporary evidence locker?
There should be, as far, but I don't know for a fact, but there should be, yes.
I agree there should be. I'm asking you if there is.
I don't know the answer to that.
The fact of the matter is, there is no log or document or report ever showing that these items were ever booked into the temporary evidence locker at Canton PD. Isn't that right?
Cool.
I don't believe that's accurate.
Do you have that evidence log?
Do you
I
have that
I
log?
don't have access to the evidence log.
Who has the
Did
log?
you get access to the evidence log?
No.
You're a supervisor at Canton PD. Why would you
correct.
not have access to the evidence log?
I think only 2 or 3 people have access to evidence.
Who are
Who
they?
they be?
The evidence officer,
Which is who?
Paul DiGiapetro, Sergeant,
Can you spell that for us, please?
DIGIAPETRO. Ampietro.
Who else?
I'm not sure.
How did he
to be
spell
honest.
that?
I'm
You spell that for us, please?
Bigiampietro.
ETRO.
Who else?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm assuming the chief of police,
Chief Berkowitz, I would assume.
most likely,
Deputy
but I
Chief.
don't know. Possibly, yes.
I'm pretty sure the chief of
No.
police would have
Any
ability
other
to get
lieutenants or supervisors?
in the
I
evidence.
don't believe so. I know
log.
I don't have access as a lieutenant.
If there's no evidence log of an item being booked into evidence, that's a pretty good indicator that it actually never made it into the evidence log, evidence locker, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
That sucks.
We do know that wherever it went, the blood items went back to, and the glass went back to Canton PD, correct?
That's correct.
May I just move on?
Yes.
I would have liked to hear his response to if there's no evidence log. Like, did it even get into temporary evidence? Like, I would have liked to hear his response to that.
May I approach briefly?
Yes.
Thank you. Lieutenant, I'm going to ask you kindly to take a look at those 4 photographs, and then once you've had a chance to review them, just look up at me and I'll ask you a couple.
Did you see them?
I don't know what was just handed to the witness.
Why don't you go take them from the witness? Take a look.
There you go. There's copies right there as well.
Thank you.
And the defense is like, oh, there's plenty of copies. We know what we're doing. We know what we're doing.
May I
Trust
approach
me.
briefly?
Yes.
Sure.
I'm sure there's 4 or 5.
Okay.
I
your
really
time.
like this lawyer.
And also-
Do you recognize those photos, or what's depicted in those photos?
Yes.
And his
Do you
energy.
recognize the time frame?
It's like
Those photos would have been taken
even.
based on context?
Yes.
February 1st, correct?
I have no idea if it was February 1st, but it would be
And he-
between the 29th of January and February 1st.
Fair enough.
He's able to like
Right.
one word in the sentence, and it
Okay.
really
Do
makes
they
such a
have-
difference.
Have they been introduced?
They have not yet been introduced, Your Honor. I'm sorry, protocol wise, I missed that step. I need to ask that these be marked as next in order.
Okay.
Four
Is there
photographs.
any objection?
No, Your Honor.
He has this amazing ability to have such an energized voice, and just the emphasis on just one word or like 1 or 2 words, or like raise the last one as it's a question is it's fantastic technique that he has.
Hold on.
And I-
Hold on. They're still being mocked, and the court reporter has to record
Mocked.
everything you say.
He is ready to go. He doesn't want to take a breath. He's ready to go. He's like, I want to nail this guy down right now. Like, I want the jury to leave at the end of this day and know that
Okay.
shit was false.
And with the court's permission, Lieutenant, I'm going to try to go in the same order, so you might want to glance at this photograph and make it better visual for you. I'd like to ask you if you recognize what's depicted in this photograph, especially the area right down here on the right, bottom right. You see that white rag?
I do.
Lieutenant, if you take a quick,
Can we read
close look at that rag, I'm going to ask you to.
Pause real quick. This is Karen Reed's Lexus. There we go. This is Karen Reed's Lexus, and this is the vehicle that allegedly went in like 20 miles per hour in reverse and hit John O'Keefe. So that is the prosecution's story, is that she reversed into John, which laid him out in the snow. And this is allegedly the car that did it. And this right here is what looks like to be that broken taillight, where they found so many red pieces of taillight, just not the night of where John was found on the ground. But yes, so this is very interesting. We'll also later see from the defense security footage, home security footage of Karen Reed driving this car and backing into John's car at John's residence, hitting the very same spot of her car seeing John's car like shake as it was hit. So this is weather and a taillight is like the key pieces to this case. Also the coroner report of like how John died also, but like this taillight is supposed to be the how like the in the snow with her taillight energy. So this is heating up, folks. This is heating up.
Tim, if you take a close look at that rag,
Down here.
I'm going to ask you to identify it on the photograph. Do you see a couple of little dark marks on what appear to be that
I see it on that screen.
better visual up there? Okay, fair enough. What's the position of that rag as it relates to the vehicle in the photograph?
It's the rear passenger side.
Right rear quarter panel, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And is that, in fact, the SUV in question?
I believe it is.
Okay. The SUV that belonged to Ms. Reed?
I believe it is. Yes.
Let's take a look at excuse me. It's 37.
37, okay.
Is this 37? Thanks. Throughout the record, we were just speaking about item 37.
Okay.
Let's move to
I really wish I could get this off, this truth finder stuff, but
looking at 38.
when it's live,
Does that appear
it's
to
not
be
on
the
there.
same
I think it's added
rag in the
post.
photograph?
It does, yes.
You see a shadow sort of looming on the top of the photograph?
I do.
Given what you just said about evidence item 37, does that appear to be
Is that a fucking Stop and Shop bag? They're collecting evidence from a car
the shadow of the right rear quarter panel of the truck?
that allegedly
I
murdered a
would
cop.
guess it's the tailgate.
So you can't guess.
I would say it was the tailgate. The tailgate's up, maybe the tailgate's up at this point.
You see a
Stop
bag
saying
in
maybe.
the middle of the
Stop
photograph?
guessing.
Yes,
Can you read what's on that bag?
Stop and Shop.
Okay, that does
Stop
not
and
look like
Shop.
evidence bag, does it, sir?
No.
Matter of fact, it looks like
No.
a grocery bag.
Correct,
All right?
Are
Yes.
you?
So not a forensically stable item, correct?
correct,
Certainly not sterile.
correct.
You know where that bag came from?
I do not.
Was that a bag that you supplied to Sergeant Lang?
I do not know. Do not recall.
Lang got the Stop and Shop bag.
I do not know.
Next photograph, please.
I'm screaming. I am absolutely.
39.
You're joking.
Take a
This
look
is
at
the photo
what's been
that I saw
marked
on the
as
internet
evidence
this
item
morning.
39. You recognize what's in the middle.
My apologies. There is blood in those cups. That was the blood samples collected from the crime scene, and they're in a fucking Stop and Shop bag. Okay, they're in red Solo cups in a Stop and Shop bag. I'm literally I'm screaming. I'm screaming. I'm screaming. I am hollering. I am hooting. I think I'm having a panic attack. Like, I feel like I'm having an actual panic attack. This is so completely unacceptable. What is actually happening right now? Oh my God. I'm freaking out. There's no way. There is no way that these motherfuckers can be taken seriously. Quality evidence collection. Raylene, I am losing it. There's no way.
Of the photograph.
Yes,
What is that?
those are the plastic cups with the coagulated blood.
Do you see on the top of the photograph, same rag
I do.
with the same markings?
Yes,
That appear that those unsealed cups with liquid blood in them are situated right near the right rear quarter panel of the SUV
You're legitimately
in this photograph.
kidding
they are
me.
to the rear of the
Like-
vehicle. Yes,
Are
And
you
next,
are you joking? Are you joking?
And this appears to be evidence item 41. I'm sorry, 40. You see the same
Oh
white
my
rag,
God.
yes,
and you see the same evidence bag. I'm sorry, Stop and Shop bag, correct?
correct,
And it's filled with 6 Solo cups.
Correct.
With what appears to be liquid blood.
correct.
Does that photograph appear to be taken at or about the same place near the right rear quarter panel of the SUV?
It's actually, I would say that the mat is the mat to the entrance to the booking area, so that is probably a couple of feet behind the vehicle.
Okay, let's go back to
He knows exactly
evidence
where it
item
is.
number
He knows that
37.
map.
Should be the first photograph.
That map. 3-4 times a week.
You see the
You're
rag in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
joking. You are absolutely kidding
Now
me.
you see the map, and it's, I'm sorry, I should note this for the record, but we're now looking at 38. You see the mat and the rag in this photograph,
I do.
and you see a tire on that mat.
Yes,
That's a golf cart of some sort that belongs to the Canton Police Department.
it's a Kubota. Yes,
A Kubota, thank you. Looks like the rag is in the same spot.
yes,
All right. So the blood inside the Stop and Shop bag is sitting right next to the right rear quarter panel of that truck, correct?
you can see the rear tire. It's probably at least 3 feet from the rear. If you look at the top, I can use the marker here. This appears to me to be the rear tire, which would put this a couple of feet behind the vehicle.
Understood. That's all I have. Lights.
I don't have actual words to explain my
Would you
level
agree
of
that having
disappointment right now.
Unsealed and unsecured blood next to the right rear portion of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination?
You want me to if I could speak to this incident alone?
That's a yes or no question. Do you think
Okay,
that,
it's not yes or no, but for your purposes, I would say yes.
and in fact,
It is a yes or no question. And yes,
be
you're
worse.
an idiot.
correct, Francis, not just inadvertent cross-contamination, if somebody wanted
God.
to touch something
There's no
on that bag,
way.
on those cups, and then touch the vehicle, they could easily do that with that juxtaposition of the open blood next to the back of the rear of the car.
Objection.
Oh,
Sustained.
Lieutenant, if somebody
you
was so
said it, so it
inclined,
doesn't matter.
that
Oh my
situation
God.
could provide an opportunity for evidence
my
tampering,
God.
couldn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
He just has to
Madam
say it.
Yes.
He just had to say it.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Lally?
It's just briefly, Your Honor.
Redirect. He could have gone harder, but I loved his approach. He said, "Hi, how are you? Okay, I have a couple questions for you. So, do you think that this is right?" He had the same level of energy throughout. His words were accusatory, but his demeanor and his questions, like the tone and timbre of his questions, were easygoing. So and in my opinion, that is so good for the jury. That is so easy. They don't have tone, words, energy, vibes. They don't have all the things to sort of like go through in their brain and sort out. The tone is taken care of. That's easily in the brain. The vibe is taken care of. That's easily in the brain. All they have to do is listen to the words and watch the witness's body language. That's all they had to do in that cross-examination. That's all we had to do in that cross-examination. The defense attorney's words were so easily consumed by the way he was saying them, right? So all we had were answers to very easily consumed, absorbed questions. It just felt so good to just take it in. Like it was handed to us. It wasn't, we weren't fighting for it. It was handed to us. The ridiculousness was handed to us. I love that. I really enjoyed it from like I'm on the jury perspective, not like I'm not glad that he got his ass handed to him, but don't put evidence and red Solo cups in a fucking Stop and Shop bag if you don't want to look like a fucking idiot in court. That's so crazy. That's so crazy to me. That is so crazy. Red Solo cups, blood and red Solo cups in a Stop and Shop bag.
Now, Lieutenant, if I could ask
You're
you,
joking.
A phrase that was posed to you a couple times during cross-examination as far as accusal of your department.
Okay, I'm gonna put it back down to 1, like to normal speed, because of how he speaks.
How would you define that term in this specific sense?
In this specific case,
Yes.
we did not want to go on any investigative interviews because one of our best investigators, name is Kevin Albert. He's the property owner's brother, and we didn't think it would be appropriate if we were on those interviews questioning his family members.
Now, with regard to death investigations, specifically unattended death investigations. What, if any, role does your department believe have
Mike.
when it comes to those
Okay.
within jurisdiction?
Mike, this is crazy. I don't know if you just saw like the last like 10 minutes, but all I have to say is red Solo cups, blood evidence, Stop and Shop paper bag. I don't know about you, but I've never seen police use that as evidentiary collection materials. On
Does
the
your,
floor of a
department
car
have
shop.
versus the
I'm
state
dead.
police?
The state police takes jurisdiction. They run the investigation. We assist them in any way we can. We try
I'm
to help out.
having a full freak out right now.
Now, sir, you were asked some questions in regard to what you indicated that in regard to the drinking glass that you located in the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was.
Yeah, you were able to find
But it
clear
didn't
glass,
come
but what
from the
about the
house.
red glass?
Why is that?
Plastics from the taillight.
I think I said, I believe we didn't think it came from the house at that time because they were out at the Waterfall Bar and Grill the night before.
But how did you know
And
that
the
when
initial
you went to the scene?
statements from Detectives Sergeant Lank and Sergeant Good obtained, nobody put John O'Keefe anywhere but where he was found, and that included his girlfriend.
Now, if I could take a step back just to the state police jurisdiction over unattended deaths, what, if any, assets the state police have as far as investigative assets that your department doesn't?
They have far superior tools to investigate. They have direct access to the crime lab. They have a CARS team that can do accident reconstruction.
Now, with regard to the criminalist and turning your attention to February 1st of 2022, when you're in the Sally Port, you mentioned that Officer Wanless came in with a toolkit to assist in removing the tail, correct?
That's correct.
And is it your understanding essentially he just removed a clip from the back of the taillight in order to take it out of the vehicle?
I believe you can see our video, it just pops into the criminalist's hands.
And as far as your review of that video, your observations that day, there was nothing about the taillight that was broken during that removal process, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as cross-contamination, you were asked about, you indicated it was not a yes or no answer. But what, if anything else, would you have to add?
What counsel was depicting was the transfer of custody over to the state police. So the criminologist was handling it at that time. The photographer was photoing it. The criminologist was transferring the blood into their plastic containers. And that's why I'm sure it was being handled by a criminologist. There wasn't going to be any cross-contamination. I wasn't concerned about cross-contamination.
So that was a
Of course you
scenario that
weren't.
you were describing earlier in the direct examination.
You never were.
As far as you're turning those items physically over to the criminalist on February 1st in Sally Port.
And they are converting them to their plastic containers, yes.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
They convert
Very briefly, you said that no one,
Put
John O'Keefe-
evidence on the
none of the
floor
witnesses
of
put
the
John
car
O'Keefe
shop
anywhere but
of the
where he
police
was found.
station.
That's
They
what
don't
you
do
just
that
said, correct?
maybe
That's correct.
in
so
like
your
an
investigative
office on a
technique is
table.
just to ask a witness, how'd that
It's
dead body
interesting.
get there? And if they say, I have no idea, your job's just done, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Yeah.
If a witness says, we found him here, you just take the witness at their word?
Objection.
You can go ahead and answer that, sir.
No, of course not.
You might want to investigate a little further, right?
Absolutely.
And ask them questions,
That is correct.
get search warrants,
That's
look
when
in the
there's probable
house.
cause, we do. Absolutely.
None of that was done here, though.
No probable cause.
Thanks, that's all I
Nope.
have.
No
You are
probable
all set,
cause
Lieutenant.
Thank you.
for a dead police officer in the snow, in the middle of
Who
a
is
cop
your next witness?
community.
Mr. Malley?
Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Sergeant Sean Good to the stand.
Okay, and while
Probable
the sergeant's
cause.
coming in, I'll see counsel about scheduling.
No probable cause. Ha, he hesitated immediately. Yeah. Do you want to go back and watch that again? Let's go back a couple.
That, sir.
No, of course not.
If a witness says, we found him here, You just take the witness at their word?
Objection.
You can go ahead and answer that, sir.
No, of course not.
You might want to investigate a little further, right?
Absolutely.
And ask them questions.
That is correct.
Get search warrants.
That's
Look
when
in the
there's probable
house.
cause, we do. Absolutely.
None of that was done here, though.
No probable cause.
Thanks, that's all I have.
You are all
No
set,
problem.
Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Okay.
No probable cause. And recross
Who is
No.
your next witness, Mr. Malley?
probable
Your Honor, the call
cause.
to call
to search the
Sergeant
house.
Sean Good to the stand.
A deputy
Okay, and while the
officers on a
sergeant's
probable
coming in, I'll
cause
see
to search
counsel
the
about
house.
scheduling.
You're joking. You're joking. You are laughable. Idiot. Let's just skedaddle through. Perfect. Boop. He hesitated.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Malley.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
All right, who the heck is this?
Could you please state your name and spell
Willie?
your last name?
It's Sean Good, Goode,
And how are you employed, sir?
at the Canton Police Department.
And how long have you been a
Oh,
member
good.
of the Canton?
Sergeant?
17 years.
Sergeant?
And what rank or assignment do you currently have with the Canton?
Midnight sergeant and 2 days patrol traffic.
Now, how long have you
He
held
gonna
the
give
rank
you
of sergeant
ticket.
with the Canton Police?
Gonna give
Coming
you
up
a
on
ticket.
3 years.
Now, with reference to your
He gonna give you a ticket.
rank and assignment as a sergeant with sort of the overnight shift, and when does that shift run from?
So it's midnight to 8. The sergeant's, the oncoming sergeant usually comes in around 11 o'clock at night.
And in general terms, if you could
I'm gonna
describe
need
to me
Lally
what
to,
sort of
like-
are your duties and responsibilities as a sergeant. on
Just get to
your
the
rank?
juicy part.
So I'm in charge of
Even the judge is like,
patrolmen that are on,
just get to the
that work
juicy
under me.
parts.
There's 4 of us on the midnight, plus myself, so 5 total. 4 on the road, 1 inside. So
Turning your attention to the evening of January 28th, 2022 into the morning of January 29th, 2022. You working on that occasion?
yes, it was.
Similar capacity as you've just described?
Yes.
And so the time as far as when you arrived at the Canton Police Station would be similar to what you just described as well.
Yes.
Now, when you arrived, if you recall, who was sort of working with you or under you on that particular shift?
So that evening's midnight shift, it was myself, Officer Pasquarelli, Officer Mullaney, Officer Saraf, and Officer Dever.
And as far, in
We've heard
addition
from
to,
Seraph and Mulaney.
Let me ask it this way. So when you're performing those duties in the Canton Police Station, where are you sort of physically situated within the Canton Police Department?
We're inside the dispatch room. That's where you handle all the calls, 911 calls, business lines, stuff like that. So anybody walks in the lobby, you're right there.
And so would that also be sort of part of your duties and responsibilities in regard to being the supervising sergeant for the shift?
That evening, yes, I was inside.
Now, with reference to 911 calls and dispatch, what, if any, training have you received in regard to those?
Everybody in the Camp Police Department, we do not have civilian dispatchers like other larger departments. So every officer that works patrol has to be certified on the PSAP station, which is the 911 dispatch console. And then once you're certified, you're able to answer all 911 calls.
And what, generally speaking, does that certification process entail?
It's learning the software, learning how to know the
That's
difference between a
interesting.
cell phone and a landline, being able to look up when if a 911 call comes in on a cell phone. We have 3 different monitors, and you'll see that one of the monitors will be a map, and all of a sudden it'll just ping, and you'll see that cell phone. And a lot of the time, because of the location of the town of Canton, we do get state police 911 calls that are on the highway. So you have to be able to differentiate which call it is. It is actually us, or is it state police? Is it Randolph? Stuff like that. So you have to be able to read a map. It's not very hard, but it's that.
Now, beyond
Not
that, now,
very hard.
people are calling in
But it's
911. They're typically calling in regard to an emergency, correct?
Yes.
What, if any,
Typically.
training did you
Let's get a couple of
did you
Karen.
receive in that certification
I
process?
mean it like
in regards
her.
to sort of, demeanor or how to handle
Like real,
people on
like Karen.
Obviously, if someone's calling in an emergency, they're probably going to be nervous, you want to just try to stay calm as possible, try to relate to them, not make them any more upset than they already are, and try to get the first thing out of is location. Where are they?
Now, with respect to calls that come into 911, what, if any, difference as far as directing the call is there between something that's sort of a medical call versus a law enforcement police type call?
So any call that comes in through 911, we determine if it's police, fire, medical. If it's police, obviously we would handle it. But if it's fire, medical, we send it to Holbrook, which is the regional dispatch for Canton Fire. So it's literally just click the button, it says fire right on the screen. That call automatically gets connected to a regional dispatcher in Holbrook, who then determines what they need, whether it be ambulance, fire, stuff like that.
Now, reference to this particular
This is
shift
boring.
on this particular day, January
But it's
28th,
necessary, I
2021,
guess.
At some point during your shift, what, if anything, did you observe about sort of the weather outside?
When we came in, it was just very light flurries. There was nothing sticking to the ground, anything like that. We were all pretty prepared that we knew that there was a storm coming at some point during the night.
And through your work with the Canton Police Department, you familiar with an individual by the name of Ryan Higgins?
Yes.
And what, if any, relationship does he have with, what, if anything, does he do for work?
He works for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It's a federal agency.
And what, if any, relationship does he have with your department at the Canton Police Station?
He has a satellite office in our department. He has his own scan card. You know, he doesn't have to check in with myself or anybody. But he works out of our station.
And is he the only agent, federal agent with the ATF that has space or anything at your police station?
No, I believe there's actually could be U.S. Customs, two of them, other agents that are at work at the station as well.
Do they have sort of similar relationships as far as?
Yes, yeah, they have access to the police department. If Brian, Agent Higgins has worked on certain calls for helped us out, whether it be a
All
firearm
right,
case,
back to
stuff like that.
1.25.
Now, on that evening
Just
of
to-
28th,
we gotta
specifically
catch
during
up.
morning, January 29th,
We gotta
what, if
catch
anything,
up.
do you recall as far as
We
seeing
still got,
Brian Higgins around the Canton Police Station?
I remember
think half
at
a
one
day.
point during the evening, he came in. I don't remember if he came into dispatch or if I just saw him on
still have a
one of
lot
the
to-
numerous
a
monitors
lot
we
to
have
get
in
through today.
dispatch. I can't leave that room because I'm the only one in the building on midnight. So, but we never talked or anything like that. Didn't think anything of it. It's not uncommon.
And do you recall around what time that occurred?
I believe it was probably 1:30. Again, I wasn't looking at a clock to see.
Now, with respect to the parking lot area of the Canton Police Station, when it comes to any sort of substantial amount of snow, what, if anything, do you do with regard to the vehicles in the parking lot in reference to that kind of way?
We try to move
It's
all the cars that we're
snowing.
not using. So would
Move
that be
the
one of the next
plow.
shifts? It's any of our unmarked detectives cars, any of the patrol vehicles that aren't being used. We try to help out the DPW, which is the Department of Public Works, as best as possible when they try to plow our station. Because if not, all it ends up being is just one trail through the parking lot, and it's kind of a nightmare. So with the help of the other patrolmen, if we can get all the keys, sometimes they're not easily located, we try to move the cars to the outer edge of the parking lot so that DPW can make a good pass, and then we'll move them back over.
With regard to the vehicles in the parking lot, beyond sort of the personal vehicles and the marked units belonging to Canton Police, with regard to some of those other agents like Mr. Higgins that you talked about, what, if any, vehicles would they have within that parking area?
He had federal cars there that he used on cases, and I believe he had two. They'd be, I guess, his cruisers. They were Dodge pickups.
And then with regard to those vehicles, in regard to snow removal, what, if anything, was typically done with regard to that?
They were parked to the outer edge, so we don't have access to them. At least I didn't have access to them.
Now, working that sort of 911 dispatch area desk, at some point, just before 5 a.m., what, if any, calls did you receive around that time?
I received a phone call from a woman, generally asking if we had locked up or transported a male party that evening. It's not uncommon that people call and say, "Hey, did you lock up so and so, or did you stop anybody?" She said some version of he was out with friends. He didn't come home tonight, and his girlfriend's worried about him.
At the time that you received that call, did you know who that person was on the other end?
No.
And fair to say, at some point later, you had responded to Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes,
And the person who had called just before 5 a.m., did you have occasion to speak with them when you were on scene on Fifth?
I did.
Who did you identify that first call to come in from?
First call was Miss Roberts.
That would be Kerry Roberts, is that
Yes.
correct? Mayor Pro.
Yes.
So Carrie
So show me
Roberts
this. You recognize that?
Yes,
called
That's-
that would be the
911
911 call from our station.
And that would be specifically from Ms. Roberts, is that
to
correct?
see
Yes.
if
I'm almost introducing Ms.
John O'Keefe got like locked
No
up.
objection.
Your Honor, with court's permission, I would ask to publish that call to the jury.
And I want to
Okay.
know what time this was.
Hold on 1 second, please. What number? Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. I thought that's what you said. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Carrie's 911 call.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. We were at waterfall. And now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where
Okay,
he is.
all right, let me- It's already hard to hear, so let's just go to normal speed.
Because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. We were at waterfall. And now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where he is. You didn't take anybody up by the name of John O'Keefe, did you? Yeah, he's about to call and we'll be on phone, so.
No.
He probably not arrived and have got his own house, I don't know, but.
Yeah, no, we didn't want anybody else or anything like that. And where does he live?
He lives on Meadow, downtown.
He lives on Meadow, Pleasant. Okay, and you, where, so that home, you said his girlfriend?
Yeah, they were out having drinks, and then she left, and expected him to come home at some point, and he never did.
Yeah.
And so, I said to her, you know, my husband had been out with her earlier in life, but then he obviously came home, and he kept custody with me to nephew from the parents, back to her.
Okay.
And so she knows we're going to have to go there, and I
Oh, hard to hear.
She nervous because he never even property.
Yeah.
So she's like, I feel like something happened, and I said, okay. Well, so the top area hospital, nobody happened. I personally think he probably, somehow take him out to the doctor. I don't know.
Yeah, where, did he drive last night?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, I think, again, it's more, it would be driven by.
The quality of everything that comes from this police station is garbage.
Talk to us, but I mean, as of right now, it's more, you know, he's just all what I'm saying, this conference, sometimes we'll have a little.
No, that's why. That's because he didn't tell me. That's kind of why she's more freaking out. So I think I called the hospital, I said, call Kansas police to move to our, you know, they go, I think it's not complete stuff, and then it was actually released. If anybody puts it from us,
Yeah.
we get it off.
Okay.
And we have a little bit of time, I thought,
Yeah, no.
no.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there, I was stuck in it. But we haven't had any calls, anything like that. Nobody was arrested or anything like that. You know, all right.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, no problem. Good luck.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me just
Sergeant Good.
pause it and say sorry for the crappy quality 911 call. So what happened, why it's so hard to hear and it just sounds like is because all the microphones in the room very, very sensitive. Very, very sensitive. They are turned all the way up to catch everything. You can hear everyone move, shift their feet, get comfortable, cross their legs. You can hear everything. So when the sound is coming through the TV, it's also being picked up by the microphones, multiple microphones. So we're hearing like it 4 times all at once. I did hear her ask, I know he's going to go through it, but I did hear her ask if if they've picked up anyone named John O'Keefe. He's a Boston police officer. So That's really all I could make out. I will probably try to find maybe a not so crappy version of that and maybe play it for you guys if I can
Good.
find
What
it.
was played in there, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of the 911 call that you had with Kelly Roberts around
Yes.
5 a.m.? Now,
Let
turn
him
your
finish the
attention
question
to
before you
about an hour
answer.
forward, approximately 6 a.m. on the 29th. What, if any, other phone calls did you receive, bless you, in regard to the same sort of parties?
At 6:04 a.m. on the 911 dispatch console, I received a call from a woman at 34 Fairview.
I didn't
Now,
catch
in
the
those
time that Carrie called,
intervening sort
though.
of hours, so as you were stating on the 911 call, no one sort of physically came into the Camden Police Station and reported anything in regard to this, correct?
No.
And again,
Why does
the
that matter?
party that you spoke to on the phone at approximately 6:04 a.m., did you know that person at that time?
No.
And again, you responded later on or shortly thereafter to Fairview and spoke with a number of different, correct?
Correct.
From those conversations on scene, you now know who placed that 911 call at approximately 6:04 a.m.
Yes.
And who is that person?
That'd be Miss McCabe.
And that would
Jen
be Jennifer McCabe, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with regard to, you talked about
The
the
third
weather when
woman
you
who
first
disappears.
arrived, to your shift around 6 a.m. What, if anything,
Then gets
had
interviewed?
changed between the weather when you arrived and around 6 a.m.?
It was snowing heavily.
What did
Now-
you do then? Tell me how you react to snow. Do you shovel?
Madam Mayor, approach again.
What about the apron? What about the apron? Tell me about the apron. I ate my Pop-Tart. And I made a mess. Oh no. Sorry.
So,
Tell me
you know
about
this,
the
you
apron.
recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that?
That'd be the 911 call from Mrs. McCabe.
Mrs. McCabe,
I'll
Jennifer
introduce you to the minutes of
McCabe.
next exhibit.
Remember, there was three
No objection.
women there when the
Okay.
cops first arrived: Jennifer McCabe, Carrie, and Karen. And then multiple EMTs say that there were only two women, Carrie and Karen. Jennifer, skedaddle. Back into
And
the
Your Honor, with
house.
court's permission, I would ask to publish Exhibit 36 to the jury now as well.
Okay.
My ears are so itchy. I had such a bad allergy day yesterday. It was crazy. My tongue was like swollen. It was awful.
Yes, I'm from the third floor to, third floor, years old, and that, there's an impact out in the snow.
You can't pull out, you can't finish, no, you can't get to know, okay?
Yeah, all right. I could keep it, like, something like that, you're in the issue. Okay. I'm going. Where's the market? I don't keep my head. 911 emergency. And immediately can start the new road, can't do that.
What's going on?
There's a guy on the truck in the snow.
In the snow, 34?
Yes, 34, the Albert resident, yes, I just pulled up in Mountain.
Did she say the Albert residence? The Albert's house?
Pulled up in Mountain.
Hold on. Sorry.
There's a guy on the truck in the snow.
In the snow, 34?
Yes, 34, the Albert resident, yes, I just pulled up in Mountain.
Done. Done. I'm so done. In the 911 call, she said 34 Fairview, the Albert residence. What do you mean you didn't know whose house it was when you got there? You had no idea. She said in the 911 call what house it is. Oh, I'm losing it. I can't believe this is real life right now. This is happening to.
That's a UPN map, yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I'm talking, you got the 34, yeah, you wrote it, you said.
34 Fairview?
Yes, it is, I mean, I'm responsive to the snow.
Okay, the,
He's gonna get here, okay.
Okay, what's going on with you guys now?
We just got some over.
Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone really?
That's his girlfriend, yeah, so he's,
Okay, how old is he?
John is, 46 years old.
46, how long has he been outside?
I don't know, I don't know, he got out of the car.
This is wild. This is
Is he, Jerry, is he? I don't know if he's breathing. She was trying to, it could be, he's there.
I'm sorry for the terrible quality.
It's tough, but we have to talk to them, they just get it.
Is he breathing, guys? I don't think he's breathing.
Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to test it?
Yes, he's got CPR. No, I guess he's gone.
Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so?
No, I think he's passed away.
Okay. All right, we have to talk to Connor and the police department on the way. If everyone's declining CPR, then I can't, I'll hang up with you and, if anything changes, you can give us a call back. Where are you guys upset?
I'm better. I know, I'm the phone with the interviews. I know.
That's John O'Keefe's mother.
You gotta get off the hill.
Do you know if there's any, alcohol or drugs involved?
This is this is very hard to listen to, especially for the family, the loved ones. For us, we are just trying to hear the words being said. And for the loved ones, they are hearing the description of John in his final moments, and that is very, very hard to hear. I am not happy with Court TV panning over to the family and loved ones who are having a hard time with this. Yes, they are sitting in a courtroom that is being live streamed many, many places throughout the entire country, but also have some respect. I feel I don't like that they're there.
Okay, is there any bleeding or anything? Maybe you just have,
Yeah.
okay, bleeding from the face.
That is going directly into my eardrum. I'm gonna try to find not awful quality of those
To back that up about 10 or 15 seconds or
audios.
so. Once the siren.
Maybe on break, I'll try to find not crappy qualities so we can hear the words that are
Okay,
being said.
bleeding from the face. All right. Now take the full blood if there is any.
Something kind of happened, one of the ones that was doing CPR.
Okay, one moment. Is doing CPR? All right, if you want CPR, and just let me, just give us a call back when you don't respond, all right, but we're on the way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kenny. And so,
I just-
receiving that.
they just
911
switched back
call
over
just after,
to Karen.
6:04 a.m. What, if anything, did you do with regard to dispatch?
So once it was connected to Holbrook, you could hear me. I ended up dispatching my own officers, my downtown cruisers to 34th Fairview, and then I had one other cruiser come back to the station so I could get down there.
And, so you yourself respond down there, is that correct?
Yes.
And about how much time elapsed from the time that you sort of transferred to Holbrook from the medical situation to the time that you travel down to Fairview Road?
Remember, he was also
I would
requested
guess it had
to
to
show
be
up
less than
by
5
Officer
minutes.
Saroff.
And in addition to the patrol cars and yourself, who, if anyone else, did you notify in relation to that call when you
So I phoned Lieutenant Gallagher and Detective Sergeant Lang.
why that?
Why?
Just policy, the seriousness of the call. Lieutenant Gallagher was the off-going lieutenant the night prior, the shift prior, so that's what you usually do. And Detective Sergeant Lang is in charge of the detectives.
Now, when you left Canton Police Station to respond to Fairview, who, if anyone, assumed your role as far as manning the dispatch area in the 911?
That'd be Officer Dever.
And, may I approach?
Yes.
Yes.
Dever. D-E-V-E-R. Sorry.
And for medical reporter, if you haven't already, I'm sorry, could you just spell Officer Dever's last name if you know?
Yes, it's going to be
The
D-E-V-E-R.
court reporter's like, I'm a psychic, but thank you. I needed to know. She's so sweet. I love her so much. Her little smile is
I'll show you
adorable.
what's been previously marked as Exhibit 14.
Her smile is so sweet.
Sorry.
Okay. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That would be our roll call log, press log.
Roll call
And
log.
as far as that particular log is concerned, is there any indication on there who sort of created that log?
Yes, that'd be Officer Dever.
And these are logs that you typically create when you're working that particular position as far as the dispatch desk, correct?
Yes, it's pretty much a running journal for our department.
And sort of how is that information gleaned and how is that sort of transmitted into that log?
It's as accurate as the officer that actually enters the information. So if it was busy in there and she's by herself, you're taking information down, you're writing it, then you have to physically enter it into a computer. So there would be a delay in time.
Thank you, sir. May I approach just to retrieve your?
Sure.
Yes.
First and right. Then. Wow, that's interesting.
Now, sorry,
I mean, but I
good.
like I like
respect
having like the
to,
two
your
versions of it
response.
for sure.
Canton Police Station 234 Fairview Road.
But it sounds like they need
What was sort of
another
path of travel?
like another person or
So I
two
pulled
in
out of the police
dispatch
station
area.
at 1492 Washington
Sounds
Street,
like they need
taking
a
a right
couple more
onto
people.
Washington, heading south.
And then where did you go?
And then I took a right onto Chapman Street.
Damn it,
And then it would
Matt.
be your third right
We're back here. I thought
on
we
Fairview.
I thought we were done. I thought
And
we were
coming
done
down
with it.
Fairview, what if anything
Pull 'em out.
did you notice
Make
as far
some
as sort of the elevation of the roadway as you come from the Chapman side down to where 34 is?
Coming from Chapman, you're heading downhill towards the end of Fairview that meets Cedar Crest.
And so where is 34 in relation to sort of Cedar Crest?
It's the second house on the left before you reach the intersection of Cedar Crest at Fairview.
And as you're approaching or as you're en route between the police department and Fairview Road, what if anything did you observe as far as road conditions, visibility, things like that?
It was terrible. Heavy snow, wind, visibility was awful.
And
Would you say
when you
blizzard-like
arrive on scene, what
conditions?
is sort of the first thing that you observe upon your arrival?
As I was coming down the hill, visibility was pretty bad. Obviously, I noticed the Canton Fire engine. Ambulance was already on scene. Both my two officers, cruisers were also on scene.
Now, as far as the particular cruiser that you were in on that day, is there sort of a particular cruiser that is reserved for sort of the sergeant or lieutenant who's in charge of the?
Yes. So 682 is the primary patrol supervisor vehicle.
And that would sort of shift from shift to shift as far as whoever that particular sergeant is.
Yeah, you would take the same one. 682 is it's labeled on the side of the doors, patrol supervisor.
Patrol
And
supervisor.
so is that the vehicle or that the cruiser that you took to go from the police station to Fairview that morning?
Yes, I did.
And with regard to
Supervisor.
that cruiser and sort of other cruisers within the Canton Police Department, what if any recording system is available on those cruisers?
You got
All
dash
marked
cam?
units have it's called a watch guard camera system. It has front video camera, and then it also has in the prisoner passenger back seat has a camera there as well. They should be working audio in the back seat, they're activated by if you flip the lights on, the blue lights, it'll automatically click. You don't have to press record. The cruiser automatically starts recording. If you got in a car accident, the camera would start recording. Any kind of impact, the camera starts recording. It actually ends up being passively recording, even when it's not on.
You talked a little bit about the audio as far as the back of the cruiser, but as far as from the camera in the front of the cruiser, Where is the audio recording in regard to that, if at all?
It would be on the mic. There's a mic stand that sits in a charger. It looks like almost a beeper. Should be there.
And so that's located within inside the cruiser, correct?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Sean?
Yes.
Interesting. Let's
I'm
we
showing
went back
you
down to
a
normal speed. Let's
flash
pick it up a
you,
little bit.
recognize that?
Yes.
When will you recognize that?
That is the flash driver for the Canton Cruiser 682 streaming.
I'll call to introduce the minutes of next exhibit.
Exhibit 41.
All right, why don't we break now for lunch, Mr. Lally?
Thank you.
I was leaving them on your chairs. Follow me.
Okay. They are going to take a little break. And since we have a lot to do, a little break, I mean, they're taking a lunch break. Well, I'm going to treat it as like a 15er. And then we'll skedaddle through. I know that it may not look to you like that may look like a sassy.
All right, so Mr. Lally, you'll have Lieutenant Ray here in case.
Did you see her roll her eyes? Wait, just watch Karen's face. Wait. This is so entertaining. Look, she's like, okay.
All right, so Mr. Lally, you'll have
She's so emotive today. She's emotive today. Because I think she's extra emotive today because she is recognizing the job that her defense attorneys are doing right now and seeing it come to fruition. Like they're doing a good job, at least in my opinion. I don't know what the jury thinks. They're doing what seems to be a good job in really poking a lot of holes into the quality investigation that these police officers did on this case. They are really shining a lot of light on just the inability to be good at your job. Or to just do your job just in general. Like they're shining a lot of light on you just being a little bit too dumb for this job in this very moment, in this specific investigation. The relationships of people are growing. We're getting a better picture of the relationships of people, how many cops lived in this neighborhood. Where every day we're getting a little bit more information. We even heard in that 911 call that the Albert residence was mentioned. They said the Albert residence. Okay, the Albert residence was mentioned. And so if you're talking to a Canton police officer, 911, 34 Fairview, Albert residence, you're going to recognize that name. You're going to recognize the name. And you're probably going to pass that information along. And I am looking forward to the testimony that we're going to get here from Sergeant Good. But let's take a 15er. We're going to have a long day. We still have half a day and then another half a day. So we got a long day. Let's take a 15-minute. Maybe I'll try to find the 911 calls. All right. So be back soon. We're going to be here all day, folks. We're going to be all day. All right. I'll be back soon. Okay, I am back. I had to send out messages about the evidence being in the solo cups, in the Stop and Shop bag. And the responses that I got so far are absolutely just pure disappointment in this entire process so far. But anywho, we're just breaching like week one. You know, we've just crossed the line of week one. We have at least 7 more weeks of this. Wow. Wow. It feels like we're getting so much. It feels like we're getting so much, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to get ahead of myself, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to continue to react and not look forward. I want to continue to react in the now. So speaking about reacting in the now, let's get back into it because we have the past to continue to catch up on. And I turn the rest of the lights on. Okay. Get a little bit. Nope, we don't. Oh, okay. And volume.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Sergeant,
And we are
resuming
back.
with excuse me, just been marked as Exhibit 41. That's the cruiser camera video from your cruiser 682 that you were driving that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, with your permission, I'd like to publish some of that video.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could start from the beginning through about 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
All right, we have about 4.5 minutes of dash cam footage. This dash cam looks a lot higher quality. All right. If need be, I'll pop my face off. As of right now, it looks like it's okay. There was one sort of tow truck that he drove by. He does have his lights on. Siren. Okay, pause.
Sergeant, if you could, as the video is playing along, just alert the jury to the portion of the video where you observe yourself sort of pulling on to Fairview Road.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, when the sergeant does that, if you could just pause it. Okay.
Blizzard-like conditions. The road here does look like it had been at least plowed once. This is probably Chapman that he's turning on. We've heard Chapman a lot. Looks like a lovely little neighborhood. Who is making that freaking noise? Every
Sorry, we're
movement,
going up to Fairview right now.
every movement in this courtroom gets picked up by
That's
these
Spring.
microphones.
Then next one up. That's Fairview right there on the right.
Pause just a
And
minute.
now he's
Sergeant,
making
I'd like to
a
take you
right
back just to
onto
the right
Fairview.
that you took just before that. What street are you on right now?
That's Chapman Street.
And
I was
is that
right.
Washington Street that you returned to get onto Chapman?
Correct.
Can I ask you, when you're
Washington to
turning from
Chapman
Washington Street onto Chapman,
to
are there any
Fairview.
sort of businesses or sort of landmarks on your right or your left as you're making that turn?
So on the right-hand side, as you're turning onto Chapman, that's going to be Cassie's Corner Store. And on the left at the intersection is, used to be called Temple Beth Abraham. I believe it's Temple Bin Bar, something. I don't know the actual name, but
So there's a temple on your left and Cassie's on your right.
correct.
And so at this point in the video here is about when you're about to turn onto Fairview, correct?
Yes.
That was probably for the jury, since they went on The View. They can put in their mind exactly the route that he took. That snow is being blown sideways. Lots of wind. but it does look like a plow went through this street at least once. Also, there have already been multiple vehicles, emergency vehicles, going through this road as well. And then you can see coming up to what looks like a fire. It's all the lights from the emergency vehicles. Bright as the sun. And he's pulling right up. That looks like three.
Yes.
Someone in like a high-rise jacket is speaking to 2 or 3 civilians, it looked like to me.
So, sir, there's a pointer.
Oh, okay.
Laser pointer.
If I could, Sergeant, just ask you to, within this sort of still frame up here on the screen, do you recognize people that are depicted within this still frame of this video?
Yes.
If, to whatever extent you do recognize people, if you could, using the laser pointer, draw the jury's attention to whom you recognize.
All right, that's going to be myself. Right there is going to be firefighter McLaughlin. That's going to be Miss Reed. And if you played it another second, I believe that's going to be Miss McCabe, or if not, Miss Roberts.
Roberts, Jennifer McCabe.
The gentleman you see sort of behind you in the frame, Sergeant, you recognize who that is?
Yes, that's Officer Saraf.
My apologies.
The very first police officer that we got on the witness stand.
You can now take that down. Thank you.
So yeah, it looks like all 3 women are out there.
And so, Sergeant, you arrive on scene in that area.
Because Karen
First of
would
all, what's
not
contained in that
be
video is
getting
that
off
Saranac
the car.
Trail, what you observed as far as the weather conditions outside that day.
Yes.
And when you arrive on scene,
Weather conditions.
Initially, I walked up to Officer Saraf. I said, probably some version of what's going on. Officer O'Keefe was already in the ambulance. And then I just began to try to talk to anybody.
And so the ambulance is still on scene when you arrive, is that correct?
Yes.
Officer O'Keefe is in the back of the ambulance, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point when you're speaking with Officer Saraf, does he direct your attention to where Officer O'Keefe was prior to being placed in the ambulance?
Yes.
Where did you direct your attention?
If you're looking at the house, it'd be left-hand side, probably right in front of the flagpole.
And about how far off of the roadway would you estimate that was?
I would say 8 to 10 feet off the curb.
Speaking of other people, without reference to
Stop
necessarily
breathing
what
into the
says you-
microphone.
Following your conversation with Officer Saraf, who, if anyone, you speak to?
I believe the first person I could really get a statement from was Miss McCabe.
And when you say first person you could really get a statement from, what do you mean by that?
It was a chaotic scene. People just kind of walking in and out. And so Miss McCabe was the first one that was able to give me a good statement of how they ended up here.
Following your conversation with Ms. McCabe, who, if anyone, you speak to next?
Next was Miss Reed.
And just to be clear, when we speak about Ms. Reed, you see her in Portland today?
I do.
Just identify as where she's seated or an article or clothing she's wearing.
She's sitting between Mr. Jackson and Mr. Yannetti.
I'll just ask the record to reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, when you're on scene and you're speaking to these individuals, what if any impact did the weather have as far as your ability to sort of hear things that weren't direct conversations you were involved in?
You couldn't hear. It was oddly eerily quiet, but the wind was so howling that I had a tough time actually hearing people. So you had to speak very loud or get next to each other.
That's an interesting statement, isn't it? Because Katie McLaughlin said that she heard when Karen was screaming, I hit him. She knew. She just knew that Officer Saraf or one of the police officers overheard Karen saying that and then called for Sergeant Good to get down here. And Sergeant Good just said, it's hard to hear. You couldn't hear someone standing right in front of you because the wind was so bad. So what was it, Katie? What was it? Ooh.
And as far as your conversation with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if anything, did you ask her, or what, if any, response did she?
So I walked Ms. Reed to the back of 682. She was obviously cold. Got her in the back of the car, put the heat on, asked her, how did she end up here? How did her boyfriend end up here? She says, I don't know.
Prior to placing her in the back of the cruiser, how would you describe her sort of demeanor outside?
Confused, hysterical, shock.
What, if anything, was she saying or asking in regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
Legitimate confusion, legitimate shock.
She was yelling out, is he dead?
And is that something she said once, more than once, or something?
Numerous times.
About how loudly was she saying?
Oh, she was yelling it.
She was yelling
And
it.
so once back in the cruiser, you asked her some questions after she said, I don't know. What, if anything else, would you ask her that?
I asked her if she had driven there, and she said, I think so. And then right after that, she said, I don't remember. Because of her state, I decided to stop questioning there. She couldn't keep her train of thought.
Was it because of the shock? Was it because of the shock?
Now, you had notified Detective Sergeant Lang.
Shock of
and
finding
Gallagher,
boyfriend?
prior to you going to the scene, is that correct?
Yes.
About what time was it that either or both of them arrived?
Detective Sergeant Lang probably got there at about 6:20, 6:25. I immediately briefed him what we had, what was going on so far.
And about what time did Lieutenant Gallagher?
I believe Lieutenant Gallagher probably came in right around 7 a.m.
Now,
Gallagher didn't get there until 7 a.m.
Or if anyone else did you?
Way
Then
after.
I spoke to the other party, Miss Roberts.
If you know, about how long the period of conversation are we talking about with respect to Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts?
Each interview?
Yes.
A couple minutes.
And why was it only a couple minutes?
It was a pretty quick statement. It seemed like they were only in the car for a very short amount of time.
Move to strike.
All right, so we'll strike after. It was a pretty quick statement. Next question.
Now, with regard
She's
to
like, move it
Lieutenant
on,
Ms. Reed,
move it along.
after you had that brief conversation with her in the back of the cruiser, where did you go? Where did she go?
I believe she, at some point, we let her back outside of the car. We never closed the door on her because I was stood in the door frame with my head in the back seat. She got out. She kind of just did her own thing, paced up and back between talking to either Miss Roberts or Miss McCabe, yelling out.
And at some point, did the ambulance and Miss Officer O'Keefe was in, did that leave the scene?
It did.
And following that, what, if anything, did you say or do with reference to the defendant, Ms. Reed?
Once the Officer O'Keefe was transported, Miss Reed just was not listening to any directions. We were trying to keep her in Miss Roberts' car to stay warm. She's going back and forth. I finally told Miss Roberts, we have everybody's information. She's not needed here anymore. Go home, get warm. We'll reach out if we have to.
Not go to the
And
hospital.
shortly after,
And then hear
and
about
at that point,
your
did Ms. Roberts
boyfriend?
take Ms. Reed?
Go home.
And
Go home, get
what,
warm.
if anything, happened next on scene with regard to Ms. Reed?
It was moments later. I got a radio transmission from our officer at the working dispatch that Mr. Reed, her father, was on the phone with Miss Reed, and she was making suicidal threats to take her own life.
And based on that information that you
Okay.
received, what, if anything, did you do in regard to Ms. Reed?
Well, once our officer Deborah, who didn't even know that we had Miss Reed at the scene, she radioed to us to confirm that did we have a Karen party on scene. I said we did. She explained that her father was frantic on the phone, and Miss Reed was stating that she wanted to end her life, and he, in quotes, said he wanted her to be in protective custody. So at that time, I knew that we'd be able to get a hold of her because I had all the information. I believe I just called Ms. Roberts' phone, told her to bring her back to the scene.
And about how long was it after you spoke to Ms. Roberts that they returned?
They couldn't have gone very far, especially in the road conditions.
Then based on those statements that were reported to
Okay.
you from,
That is more information that we needed. We needed. It's more that we needed, not more than what we needed. He said, "Go home, get warm. You're not needed here." Then Karen contacted her family, her father. Then her father called 911 saying that she was making self-harm statements and that she needed to be like watched, they were probably still driving. They were probably still in the car with the snow. They might have even just like pulled over, because why go to the hospital, like go to the hospital and wait to hear, go home. Oh yeah, just go home. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And this is when they section 12'd her, and they actually called Carrie to bring her back to the scene. So it's not like she drove away and had like a panic and then drove back. She was told to come back to section 12 her. Okay. All right, that's making sense.
Dispatch from defendant's father. What, if anything, did you do with regard to misreading?
I told Officer Mulaney, who was on scene, most of our patrolmen have, it's called Section 12 paperwork inside of all of our cruisers, just for that reason. I advised him to fill out the proper paperwork, and we would go into section misread to the hospital for mental evaluation.
And what is a Section 12 from your perspective?
It's a tool for police officers when you come on scene with someone that's having either a mental breakdown, claiming that they want to hurt themselves, anything like that. We have the power as police officers to fill out the proper paperwork. We're not medical professionals. Let a doctor determine if she does need medical help. And if she doesn't want to go, or him, that paperwork allows us to actually physically put her on a stretcher and send her to the hospital. Once she gets to the hospital, it's up to the doctors there to do their due diligence. And if they deem that she's not mentally unstable, then she's released. But at least it's off of us.
So far, one reliable cop.
Now,
I believe I
the
believe him.
time the misread returned to the scene.
But I
fire department,
still
the ambulance,
feel that
the
a
engine have
Section
already
12
left. Is that correct?
Yes,
was
correct.
a little too much.
And then point to,
Why
apparatus
could
from the fire
not?
department
Why could
back
a
reference
mental
to
health
Section
professional not
Correct.
go
So
to her?
another, I believe this group
In a
was from
moment
Station
of
2, which
shock
is the other
and
fire
panic.
station in the town of Canton. They arrived on scene.
And during that time in between, who arrives first? The fire department?
I've said it a couple of times now, but I don't believe calling. Okay, so we just got this information. Calling her back, she's having a hard time. She's in shock. She's fearful. She's having a really rough time, right? And she was just told to go home. She was not told go to the hospital and wait to hear. She was not told, she wasn't told anything other than go home. Is what I'm gathering. Go home. I have your information. I'll call you if we need you. Go home. She's the one freaking out. She's the one who has the closest relationship with this person. Go to the hospital. Hey, we're gonna put you in a car. We're gonna take you to the hospital so that you get there safe and you can wait. In the waiting room. We'll let the doctors know that you're here. And like if you have any questions, she should have gone to the hospital to been able to wait to hear about her boyfriend either being alive or dead. Not go home. Especially if she was already at that level of panic. If she's already at that level of panic and you send her to the hospital, guess what? She doesn't need to be retaken back to the scene to be transported to the hospital and being told that she's crazy. I believe him, but I don't like the process.
And during that time, after Ms. Roberts arrives with Ms. Reed and prior to the fire department arriving, what, if any, interaction did you have with Ms. Reed during that time?
None.
And then once the fire department returns on scene, what, if anything, do you direct them to with regard to Ms. Reed and with regard to the paperwork you had Officer Mulaney fill out?
Officer Mulaney and Officer Sarif, and looks like in the video, escort Ms. Reed to the ambulance, and she's safely transported to the hospital. Our officer back at dispatch called back Mr. Reed, advised her that his daughter was safe.
And then turning back to the scene, following Detective Sergeant Lang's arrival, what, if any, where, if anywhere, did you and Detective Sergeant Lang go on scene following?
So when we were waiting for the fire truck to arrive, we noticed that the lights went on at 34 Fairview. We needed to obviously speak to the homeowners. I told Sergeant Lang at the time, I believe he was on the phone with CPAC for the state police. I said, the lights just went on the front door. Let's go speak to the homeowners. And we both walked in.
You actually physically walked into the house, is that correct?
Yes.
With respect to prior to you seeing sort of the house lights go on at 34 Fairview, had you seen anybody go into or out of that residence while you were there?
Yes. At some point, either myself or Sergeant Lang told Ms. McCabe that she needs to wake up the homeowners. We need to speak to them.
And why did you say that specifically to Ms. McCabe?
We have no idea why John O'Keefe is laying on the front lawn of a house. We have no idea. The statements from the three people, we need to figure out what happened that night.
And so I guess my question is more why Ms. McCabe versus somebody else?
Ms. McCabe is the sister-in-law of the homeowner, so she would be a friendly face to knock at the door at 6 o'clock in the morning in a blizzard.
Now, beyond anybody at 34 Fairview Road, again, before you observe those lights go on in residence, from the other houses sort of on the street up and down, who, if anyone, did you observe come out of any of those?
Nobody.
And was that something that you, about the time
Did
that
you see
were on
anyone
scene?
peeping through the windows?
So how long were you on scene for in total?
Looking at the log, we were there for almost exactly 2 hours.
So during those 2 hours, no one from any of the houses on the street came outside?
No, I mean, every emergency truck that showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning during a blizzard, there's no other cars on the road, so you're not coming down with sirens blaring, waking up an entire street, a neighborhood. There's no need for it. So it was just lights and flashing, and to be honest with you, couldn't see very far.
So you and Detective Sergeant Lang go into the home at 34
That
Fairview.
is
and
fair.
anyone can speak to him.
That you couldn't really see that far.
Mr. Albert, Mrs.
Visibility was
Albert, Brian, and
low.
Nicole.
And with anyone else?
But for
was
me,
present
I
in
just
the
had
hall
like
when
a
you- when
sixth
you spoke?
sense
When I was in there, I know Jen was in there, but we didn't speak to her because we already spoke to her.
when
But
like
we just spoke
cops
to
show
Brian
up
and
from my
Nicole right
neighbor's
in the
houses.
front room.
I'm peeping.
Now,
I'm
you
peeping
heard
through that window,
over the course
I'm
of
on my
the 911
porch,
call from Mr.
you
Kid
know?
that she references
listening,
references
cup
the
to the
third floor
wall.
interview is the Albert residence, correct?
Yes.
And did you know Brian Albert, or were you aware of who he was prior to going to the house that day?
I know of Brian Albert, yes.
And how did you know?
He's a brother of a coworker that I've worked with for 18 years.
And coworker that you worked with for 18 years, who's that?
Detective Albert.
What's his first name?
Kevin.
And had you ever been to that house before?
No.
You ever been inside that house before?
No.
And when you go inside that day, it's Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Ms. McCabe, is that correct?
Yes.
And during the time that you were in there, do you recall seeing, or who, if anyone else, do you recall seeing in there besides those three people, yourself and Detective Sergeant?
Nobody. Detective Lang took the lead on speaking to Brian and Nicole Albert, and I kind of just moseyed in the front of the house, looked in the dining room, and listened to what they said, what happened. They seemed like they were generally in shock that there was a
Objection.
Sustain. Next question, please.
If anything, did you observe about their demeanor when spoke?
They looked like they just got woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Question.
And as far as you indicating that you're sort of looking or poking around the front area near the front door, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, of note did you observe inside the house when you did?
Nothing. Everything to be in order. It seemed like a normal house.
And following, if you know, about how long was that conversation in the house?
Did it look like there was just
I'd
a
say
brawl?
25 minutes.
And following that conversation, where did you and Detective Sergeant Lang go?
At the time, we both left the residence, came outside, and at that time, Lieutenant Gallagher was arriving. We had like a little bit of a powwow, figured out what was going on, and I believe that's when we saw Jen McCabe's husband show up and walked in.
And again, you didn't know Jennifer McCabe prior to that day, correct?
No.
Did you know her husband prior to that?
You just allowed Jen
So
McCabe's
after you saw
husband
her
to just
husband,
walk
who you
in.
now know to be your husband, walk in, what, if anything, did you, Detective Sergeant Lang?
Sergeant Lake ran back inside to get a statement from Mr. McCabe as well.
Did you go with him as well?
I did not.
And after you have sort of conversation between yourself, Detective Sergeant Lang, and Lieutenant Gallagher, what, if anything, did you, the three of you do from there?
Lieutenant Gallagher immediately said we need to seal off the area of where Officer Keith was located. We grabbed some crime scene tape around. He wanted to photograph the area as well.
And who, if anyone, grabbed the crime scene?
Myself.
And what, if anything, did you do?
I wrapped it around by the flagpole tree and cruiser. It was hard to keep up just because the wind was blowing at such a good rate.
And then what, if anything, did you and the other officers do with respect to the area that was identified to you as where Mr. O'Keefe was on Officer Sarah's route?
Lieutenant Gallagher noticed that the snow was coming down at such a good clip, we couldn't keep it clear, and made the idea of anybody have a leaf blower, and I did. So I told him I'm not too far away from the house, so I shot back to my residence and grabbed my own.
And about how long a period of time was it between the time that you sort of left?
Okay, hold on. Did you see how fast? Guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. Did you see how fast the prosecution just kind of glazed over all of the conversation and interviews that they had with Jennifer and the homeowners? Just kind of glazed right over it. Like, hey, you talk to them. They were innocent, so no need to talk anymore. Just glazed right over it. And apparently, this guy, what was his name? I forgot his name. I got it right here. Sean Good, right. Sergeant Good is the one who went home and got the leaf blower. So, good.
Left to go get the leaf blower in the time that you arrived back.
No more than 5-7 minutes.
And
So you live
once
close?
arrived back at
Close enough to know
back in the
your
area
neighbors?
34 Fairview Road, what, if anything, happened?
I started it up for Lieutenant Gallagher. He took it over, and it worked great.
Now, with respect to that sort of implementation of the leaf blower, what, if anything, did you or other officers do to sort of memorialize this?
So as Lieutenant Gallagher was using the piece of equipment, I used my iPhone, videotaped it, and took two still photos.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I actually don't need to.
I'm going to need more iPhone quality photos than the ones that we just have of him using a leaf blower. You know, like, what about the ones of the house? Like, I don't know. I feel like the quality of the ones that we got are garbage. but the leaf blower, 4K.
Just the first one. Sergeant Good, have you seen what's up on screen as Exhibit 33 before?
Yes.
And what do you recognize as?
That's Lieutenant Gallagher.
And what, if anything, does Lieutenant Gallagher have in his hand at the time in this particular case?
The leaf blower?
And what's depicted on the screen, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you memorialized on scene that day with respect to leaf blower?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run just this one video.
Thanks. I hate this. Thanks. I hate this so much. This makes me so angry. I get what they were trying to do. I get what they were trying
Now,
to
with
do.
respect to using that leaf blower on scene,
But
Sergeant, what,
was
if
it
anything, did you observe
successful?
snow when
That's
that was
up
being
for
thrown
you
away
guys
for the
and the
later?
jury to
It exposed
decide.
the blood and small drinking glass broken.
And do you see those items in what's frozen up on the screen right now?
I do.
If you could, using that laser point, direct the jury's attention to where you observe each of those items in this.
So that's the glass right there. And then all the blood droplings.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You can take over.
But where are the red plastic shards of her tail light?
Now, prior to
Did anyone out of the
using the leaf
dozen or
blower, what,
so
if anything, did
people
Lieutenant Gallagher
working the
instruct
scene
you and any other
find
officers
it?
to do with regard to your cruisers that were parked on scene?
We needed to move them out of the way. He wanted to be able to get a good shot of the area. So we kind of closed off the road. And
Ms. Gilman, if I could have Exhibit 41 back up again. Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward on this to about 40 minutes and 30 seconds in. You could pause it right there. Now, Sergeant Good, what's up on screen, is that the point that you are referencing now as far as about to move your cruiser for that purpose?
this was early when we moved out of the way of the ambulance, I believe.
Fine.
Oh, no, could be right.
Regardless, you recognize this the
Yes, sorry. If you just play forward, I'll know.
I'm sorry.
Just play forward, I guess.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, I'd like to play this through, so about 41 minutes and 12 seconds or so. But if you could just pause it real quick, I'm sorry. Sergeant, at some point when you move this cruiser, what, if anything, you're able to see in this footage of the front lawn area of 34th Fairview?
So my cruiser camera pans the front yard of 34th Fairview, and it shows the snow undisturbed. No footprints, any tracks, anything like that leading anywhere.
And if you could just.
It was
speak
also
up when you
very
get to
windy.
that point, and Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it on that.
Footprints get covered up very fast if it's loose snow and it's windy. It was just about like less than an hour from them moving John's body to the leaf blower being used, and they needed to use something to get the snow off because it's snowing actively and it's also very windy, so it's blowing the loose top layers of snow around as well.
You could pause it right there. Now, the area that you were speaking about before, is this sort of the portion of the video?
Yes.
And using the laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's attention to the portion of the yard that you were talking about in indication of no footprints or anything that you observed next.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, if you could just let it run through for.
Can you thoroughly review something like that, like from the inside of your car with a crappy
And Ms. Gilman, you can
dirty
take it.
windshield, though?
Now, Sergeant Good, you spoke about as well some photographs that were taken to memorialize the area of where Mr. O'Keefe was found. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I go, John?
Yes.
Interesting, huh? I am doing my nails. I needed to do my nails. I have to do my nails. I'm sorry. So, just because he was in the car and he's
Show
like,
you what's been
see,
marked
no
as
footprint.
8.
You could see lots
First,
of
just if you recognize it.
shadow when the light
Yes.
hit it,
what do
right?
you
So,
recognize
like there were
that?
divots.
That is
So like
34 Fairview.
snow blows and the wind
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have Exhibit 8 up on
coming
the screen.
down. How do we know for sure? And how
What's up on the screen, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed on scene that day?
Yes.
I need to
If I could
know
ask you to
if
flip forward in that book before you to Exhibit number 10.
when he went down, how much has it already snowed?
And Ms. Gilman, if we
Could
could
they
have
have
Exhibit
brawled in the grass, went back inside, maybe, and then, you know, if he
Sergeant,
was
what's up
hit
on the screen, is
before
that
it
what you have
started
before you with
snowing,
Exhibit 10?
Yes.
the opposite
You
could be
recognize
true
that?
too. For a fight knocking him
Yes.
out before
And what do
the
you recognize
snow.
that?
They go in.
That is
no
a scene
footprints
where
in the snow.
our officers and the witnesses found Officer O'Keefe.
I
And
don't
if
know.
you could, using that laser pointer you have before you direct the jury's attention to where you were directed to where Mr. O'Keefe was found.
Objection, hearsay.
No, I'll allow it.
Go ahead. Now, sir, if I could ask you to flip forward in that book just a little bit more to what's been marked as Exhibit 20A.
He can point to where he was found because there's blood, but he wasn't there when John was down. He wasn't there when John was picked up off the
And
ground.
if I could have that exhibit on the screen as well. And you recognize what's up on the screen as Exhibit 20.
Yes, that's the curbing.
Curb.
And as far as the curbing is concerned, how is it sort of cleared off in this particular area?
We had to kick it off with our shoe to clear it off so we could actually see it, make a mark of it.
And again, that area that you were directed to, as far as where Mr. O'Keefe was found, you observed that in this photograph of Exhibit 20A as well.
Yes.
You could, using the laser pointer before you direct the jury's attention to where in this photograph that is. Now, may I approach this to,
Yes.
so lastly, I'm just going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit
Aaron's looking
27.
right at him. Looking right
Sergeant, do you
at
recognize
him.
that?
I do.
Ms. Gilman, if we could have 27 on the screen.
Show me the picture on the screen, please.
And Sergeant Good, what's up on the screen as, and before you as Exhibit 27? Sorry, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 27?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury what we're looking at in this.
So we have the blood, and then right here is the broken drinking glass that was located.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
May I approach this to retreat?
Yes.
I'm really I'm having a hard time with the lack of red plastic pieces from her car. No one has found a single piece of taillight yet. And this has been over an hour now.
Let me have just a moment now.
Yes.
Over an hour at the scene. And that's supposedly how he went down, by her backing into him, and it broke her taillight.
Following your time on.
How far did he
sir,
travel?
where did you go?
Once we cleared 34 Fairview, I returned to the Camp Police Department.
And the items that you were talking about as far as the blood, which believed to be blood droplets in the snow and the piece of the cocktail glass, what, if anything, did you or other officers do with regards to that?
Overruled.
Go ahead.
Detective Sergeant Lank transported those back to the police department.
Again, just one moment, Sean.
Okay.
What
I'm
did
not
the
sure if
glass
it's
go in?
All right.
We know
TNA.
what
Thank
the
you, Honor.
blood went in. The red pillow cups and the paper Stop and Shop bag. What did the glass go in? All right, cross-examination.
Afternoon.
Sir, you and I have never met, correct?
No.
We've never spoken.
No.
Sergeant Good, you grew up.
I haven't
in Canton?
prepped you
I
right.
did.
You attended Canton Public Schools,
I did.
graduated from Canton High School.
I did.
That would have been in 1998.
Yes.
Is it true that in your graduating class was somebody named Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
You knew Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
You knew her to be Michael Proctor's sister, correct?
Yes.
Also
Relationships.
in your graduating class
Relationships.
was somebody named Jill Daniels, correct?
Yes.
You knew her, or you now know her, to be Christopher Albert's sister-in-law, correct?
Yes.
Christopher Albert is married to Jill Daniels' sister, correct?
Haven't you just moved the map?
And you know Christopher Albert as Brian Albert's brother, correct?
Yes.
Sound,
So it is fair to
okay.
say that you graduated high school with Michael Proctor's sister and Christopher Albert's sister-in-law, correct?
Yes.
And, growing up in Canton and, working for 18 years as a Canton police officer, you're well familiar with the Albert family of Canton, correct?
I work with one of them.
You know that the Albert family is a well-known family in Canton, correct?
Sure.
The Albert family is well connected to the town of Canton, correct?
Sure is not an answer.
I don't know what you mean by connected.
Yes
They live
or
in
no?
Canton. Yes.
All right, well, Christopher Albert is a Canton town selectman, is
Immediately
not?
defensive.
Yes.
And you've already established that Kevin Albert is a Canton police officer, correct?
Yes.
And you already testified that you knew Brian Albert as well, and you knew that he was a Boston police officer who lived in Canton, correct?
Yes.
In fact, he and his family lived at 34 Fairview in Canton, correct?
Yes.
You also knew that his family had been there for years. Before Brian Albert owned the house, his parents owned it, correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Now, as
even
of
better.
January 28th of 2022, who among the Albert family did you know either personally or professionally?
Professionally is Kevin Albert.
Okay, and what about personally?
I knew Chris.
And you know that Christopher Albert, in addition to being a town selectman, also owned a pizza place in Canton, correct?
Yes, he does.
What's the name of that pizza place?
That'd be D&E.
And have you eaten there before?
Yes.
You've seen Christopher Albert there before?
I
Probably
have.
delicious.
Now,
Do they use fresh mozzarella?
on January 29th of 2022, you learned at approximately 6 a.m. that John O'Keefe's body was found on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And as of January 29th of 2022, you knew that Brian Albert at that time, of course, was the brother of your fellow Canton police officer, Kevin Albert, correct?
Yes.
And how long have you known Kevin Albert for?
As long as I worked at the Kent Police Department.
And
how long has that
is
been?
approximately 18 years?
Coming up in 18 years, yes.
18 years.
And is Kevin Albert older or younger than you or around the same age?
He's older than me.
By how many years, if you know?
I don't. Probably
Approximately?
5 years?
Okay.
Have you ever shared a patrol car with Kevin Albert?
No.
Have you ever worked on an investigation or a case with Kevin Albert?
I probably have. Yeah.
Probably.
In addition to being a colleague, would you also consider Kevin Albert to be a friend?
Yeah. We've socially hung out after work.
So yeah.
And
Friend.
because he is a fellow
reached out,
Canton
he'd
police
say, "What's
officer,
going
you'd
on,
expect that he would have your back in a crisis, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'll let him have it.
I hope he would defend me while working. Yes, he's a police officer.
You would certainly protect him in a crisis.
Okay. I just want to answer this question. So sorry I'm late today. Hi, Ronnie. Did I miss the discussion with the EMT girl in the photos? Not yet. No, you didn't miss that. But you did miss. But you did miss the red Solo cups that they put the blood samples in. So there were six of them, and they were placed into the evidence bag, which just so happened to be a paper Stop and Shop bag. So, yeah.
In a crisis, correct?
At work, when we're police officers, yes.
Sure. Well, even out of work, if he was in a crisis, you'd probably help, correct?
I don't know what you're asking.
Well, there is the teamwork that is part and parcel of being a police officer with your fellow officers, correct?
Sure.
It's a dangerous job.
Sure.
You need to have each other's back.
Sure.
You need to depend on your fellow officers, correct?
I didn't
Sure.
think it could
And
get
it's
any
been
worse.
said there's a brotherhood among police officers,
I think it
correct?
can get a lot worse.
To a fact.
And,
Which is
when
awful.
you meet another police officer,
That's how low my
he or she will
standards,
tell you that they're quote on the job, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
especially like small
Objection
town
sustained.
cops.
And in terms of depending on your fellow officers, you're taught all this beginning in the police academy, correct?
Objection.
No, he can have that.
Yeah,
What have I taught?
Well, I'm
defending
asking you,
your fellow
With
police
regard
officers.
to the teamwork and having each other's backs and working together and depending on each other, you're taught that starting in
Sure.
And it's reinforced over the
Yes
years
or
by
no?
superior officers and your colleagues, correct?
Sure.
Now,
What's with Shore? Who has advised them to use Shore?
you were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case, correct?
Assigned as the what?
You were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case.
I don't know reconstruction analysis. No, I was the patrol supervisor that day.
Let me just have a moment, Ron.
Okay.
He's like, but I have this document. Do you guys want to know about this document? Yeah. So, the red Solo
May I
cups
approach?
Yes.
were placed in a Stop and Shop paper bag. And then there's photographs of them on the floor, the bag on the floor of the shop where the car was being
Now, I'm going to show
like
you what is,
investigated, like they were doing work on the car, taking the tail light
I'll show you
out,
pages, but there are
getting
quite a
any
few.
Okay.
It's a,
information,
not describe what you're
evidence
showing to the
from the
witness and
car.
Just go ahead and show
The
it to me.
shop.
sure. I'm going to direct
It was
you
on the
to
floor
first four pages
behind
in
the
record,
car.
just the fifth page.
Open.
And specifically,
Red Solo cup
the second
open.
paragraph, and it's number 2.
Okay.
And I will ask you if you've seen that before.
Is the defense hitting him with something that
Okay.
he didn't even know about?
And
Or
I'll
was
take
he
it
just
back from
confused
you.
about the
Okay.
question?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you recognize what this is?
Looks like some state police form.
Okay. Is it a
Why don't you not ask him? He just answered what he thought it was.
are you familiar with a collision analysis and reconstruction section, a CARS report?
I know that the state police has a car section that handles motor vehicle homicide.
Does this appear to be a CARS report?
I've never seen one. You just showed me one. I'm not in the state police.
But you did see that your name is listed in the paragraph that I pointed out to you,
Sure.
and you're listed as
Yes or
Sergeant
no?
Sean Good, that's you, correct?
Mhm.
Of the Canton Police. You were assigned as the primary investigator in this reconstruction.
Because I wrote the offense report from that day.
Well, I'm just asking you. I'm dealing with a state police report that lists you as the primary investigator with regard to the reconstruction.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Sustained. Sure, why don't you all come up for a minute? Bring that, please.
Yeah, getting she doesn't like, the judge definitely does not like that attitude when it comes to questioning. She doesn't like it. Oh, I'll be rewatching this to get caught back up. I can't believe I missed that. I know, I'm so sorry. I didn't think it was gonna happen, but I woke up this morning and I was like making a thumbnail. And I saw a picture of the bag with the 6 cups in it open. And I was like, uh-oh, we're in for a treat today. So yeah, that happened, and I screamed and pissed and shit myself, because there is absolutely no way that is even considered acceptable, let alone acceptable. What do you mean? That's crazy. It was open, and there was also like this big sort of like 4-wheeler golf cart, like even closer to this open bag, the tire of it dirty, covered in salt and snow and mud and gunk and water,
Sergeant
right
Good,
next
what
to
was
it.
your
And he was like,
understanding
well, they were transferring it
February
into their
1st of
own
2022
evidence containers
regarding the Canton
off the
Police
floor of the shop.
Department's role in this homicide investigation?
I believe at some point on the 29th, we recused ourselves and we weren't part of the investigation.
Oh, so you did know as of the day that John O'Keefe was found on Brian Albert's front lawn that the Canton Police had recused themselves from the case, correct?
At some point, I was notified after I finished all my paperwork, yeah.
And what was your understanding of the recusal decision in terms of what the Canton Police was either allowed to do or not?
Well, he had passed away, so now no matter what, it's state police investigation. It's a homicide. We do not investigate homicides.
Well, you've been a Canton Police officer for 18 years, correct?
Yes.
During those 18 years, do you know how many homicide investigations have occurred in Canton?
None.
None?
Homicides? No. That I was involved in? None.
That the department was involved?
I can't think off the top of my head, no.
So in the 18 years, this is the first homicide that your department's been involved in, to your knowledge?
Yes,
Okay. Are
He
you
said,
aware
okay.
that although the state police have primary jurisdiction, they work hand in hand with local departments, usually, unless there's a conflict of interest?
yes.
So in this case, you learned that there was a conflict of interest. And my question to you is, what did that mean in terms of your potential involvement in the investigation once that conflict was determined?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
It was a pretty
Were
complex.
you the primary investigator
Question.
for the Canton Police Department as of February 1st?
No,
Did you participate with the state police in any part of the reconstruction?
no.
Now, Sergeant Good, who is Brian Higgins?
He is a ATF agent that has a satellite office out of the Canton Police Department.
And when did you come to meet him?
I have no idea when he started. It's been years.
It's over a decade,
I don't think so, but maybe.
between 5 and 10 years?
Sure.
And
Stop
how
saying
often
sure,
would you
that is
see him
driving me
at the Canton
crazy.
Police Station?
I work midnights, so during that time, but I mean, 3 times a week I would see him. I mean, but we don't have the same work schedule. I don't know when he works. He doesn't know when I do.
Okay, and when you say you work midnights, that means you come in at midnight?
Yes,
At 8 a.m.?
correct.
And he works in the same building as you in terms of the fact that he has an office there, correct?
I'm so
Yes.
sorry.
Are there any other ATF agents that have offices in Canton?
A treat
could be. I don't-
indeed.
We
There's
don't,
just
they
no
don't check in
excuse
with
for
us.
that kind of
Do you
handling.
know of any ATF agents that
Astounding.
have offices at the Canton Police Department?
Not that I know of, no.
What about officers from other local departments, surrounding towns? Do they have any offices at the Canton Police Department?
No,
And you're not sure exactly how long he's had that office for, but it's been years.
correct.
He has his own key card to enter the building?
Yes,
Okay.
And you say you've seen him 2 or 3 times a week in the time that he's had an office there?
sure.
You're aware that Brian Higgins is a close
Sure.
friend of the former Canton Police Chief, Kenneth Berkowitz?
Sure.
You know that Chief Berkowitz was the reason that he was allowed to maintain an office? at the
Sure
Canton Police
is not an answer.
I didn't know that.
Well,
In my opinion.
his close friend, Chief Berkowitz, was your boss on January 29th of 2022, correct?
His close friend?
Yeah, Brian Higgins' close friend, Chief Berkowitz, was your boss on January 29th of 2022.
Okay.
Yes, he was.
And does okay mean yes?
Okay. I need a yes or no.
And you worked
Do you know that
the
or not?
midnight shift that day as well?
No, I
What was your shift?
took it off.
Were you assigned to dispatch that day?
The night of the incident?
Yes.
No, I stayed inside. I was inside.
Inside where?
The dispatch. I handle all the calls, send the guys
All
everywhere.
right, that was my question. I'm sorry if I'm
Okay.
not being clear, but you were on duty, correct?
Yes,
What was
I'm
your
sure.
shift?
I'm hearing
my shift
sure.
was
Let's go
I
with
stayed
that. Yeah.
inside,
I'm sorry, what was the timing of your shift?
12 to 8.
Thank you. And when you say you stayed inside, that meant you were
Thanks.
handling
Oh,
dispatch, correct?
correct.
And when you're handling dispatch, you're not expected to leave the station and physically respond to calls that come in, correct?
It depends on the call. Anything within reason that a supervisor should go, I'm leaving the station.
Okay, but,
Normal car accidents, stuff like that, that patrol can handle, no.
okay, so unless it's something unusual, you're going to stay at dispatch, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And just after 1:30 a.m., while you were working dispatch, that's when you saw Brian Higgins enter the Canton Police Station at 1:30 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
Come into the dispatch area.
I said that earlier. I don't remember him coming in, or just did I see him on the cameras walking down the hallway? We have numerous, I think we have 7 or 8 monitors in front of me that I'm able to watch people around our building.
So it could be that you just saw him on a screen, or it could be that he was in your room,
Correct.
but you don't remember which, correct?
Correct.
And before he showed up there at 1:30, you hadn't called him to ask him to come in, correct?
No.
You hadn't asked him for any help with any investigation at 1:30, correct?
No.
When you first saw him there at 1:30, did you have any
That's
idea why
exactly
he
how
was
I
showing
hear
up?
it too. Sure.
No.
Let's go with that.
And when you first saw him, do you remember what entrance he used to come into the Canton Police Station?
I don't. It was from the back parking lot. I don't know if he was on the left back rear or right back rear.
And you would agree with me that 1:30 in the morning was hours before John O'Keefe was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
You had no information at 1:30 in the morning that John O'Keefe was out on Brian Albert's front lawn at that time, correct?
Correct.
And when Brian Higgins entered the department, that was the first time you had seen him on either the 28th or the 29th, correct?
Correct.
And this is again at 1:30 in the morning.
Mhm. Yes.
Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you. You didn't know where he was coming from?
Say
No.
sure
You know what
one
he had
more
done that night?
time.
Absolutely not.
You didn't know who he had been with that night?
No.
This was a Friday night into early Saturday morning with a major blizzard forecast.
Correct.
Already started snowing.
Yes.
It was supposed to get worse.
Yes.
Was it unusual to see Brian Higgins come into the station at 1:30 a.m. on a weekend?
No.
And you don't recall how close you got to him.
So it was
No.
usual.
Are you able to tell this jury anything about his demeanor?
No. He just walked in. It's not unusual. We wouldn't have made pleasantries or say hello to each other. It's not uncommon.
And you don't recall whether or not you got close enough to him to smell his breath or to smell what he smelled like, correct?
No.
Oh, because was he drunk?
At any point, did he tell you why he was there?
No.
How long did he remain at the station for?
No idea. I only saw him come in. Never saw him leave or anything like that.
Did you ever see him do any paperwork at the station?
That night?
Yes.
No.
Did you ever see him do any administrative work at the station?
I can't leave the dispatch room. His office is out on the second floor.
So let's skip ahead a few hours later. You're still working dispatch when a call came in that a man was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
Just after 6 a.m.?
Yes.
You yourself took that call?
I did.
And with regard to who is responsible for entering the information that came in on a call to dispatch, who is that?
The person that's working the desk.
So at 6 a.m., you were responsible for taking down the information and entering it into your system, correct?
It's being recorded through the 911 dispatch, correct? But I didn't enter it into our IMC program, which is our daily log.
Okay, who enters that into your daily log?
That'd be the person that's working the desk.
And you had previously testified that location is important, correct?
Correct.
You would discuss the fact that if the call comes in on a cell phone as opposed to a landline, you want to know where that cell phone is, correct?
Yes.
And you have ways of pinging the cell phone such that you can actually see the location on a map, correct?
Sure. Yes.
And you would agree with me that ultimately when the location was entered into your system, the location was entered as 32 Fairview, correct?
No, it was 34. At least we put it out as 34.
34 was the actual address, but 32 is what made it into the police report, sir, did it not?
No,
Ooh.
my police report says 34 Fairview.
Here's your police report. What does it say? He's not going to ask you a question that he doesn't know the answer to or has a high expectation of what the answer is going to be.
Now, when that call came in after 6 a.m., you decided that you would personally go out, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I actually have the front page of your police report. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
It just took a second for them to find it.
Show Mr. Lally.
You heard him say, I don't have that.
Thank you.
I'd ask you to read that silently to yourself, take a good look at it, and look up at me when you're done.
Yep.
And you've had enough time to review it?
Yes.
Getting back to the location, which you said was important, what is the location listed in your very police report?
On the face sheet, it says 32, but in my narrative, it's 34.
Okay. The face sheet is important, is it not?
Yes.
People see the face sheet before they get to the narrative, correct?
Sure.
Is accuracy important?
Stop
Yes.
saying sure.
And the very first thing that's entered with regard to the location is inaccurate, right?
Say it again.
The very first entry with regard to the location on your police report on the face sheet is inaccurate. Would you agree with that?
I guess so. Yes.
I
And
guess
with
so.
regard to the name
Just own up
down
to
the
that you
bottom
made
of
a
that report, I
mistake.
left the report in front of you so you could look at it again.
Unfortunately, I
Read
missed.
that silently to yourself and look up at me.
Okay.
Does that refresh your memory as to what name is listed?
Yes.
What name is that?
Sean O'Keefe.
No. I can have that back for a minute. Now, you decided that you wanted to go to the call, or you decided it would be a good thing for you to go to the call personally, correct?
Yes.
So you called Officer Kelly Deaver into dispatch,
I did.
and you did that because you wanted her to cover the desk for you so that you could personally respond to the call, correct?
Correct.
Responding to the call wasn't your duty assignment, but you made it your duty assignment, correct?
Correct.
Why?
And if you were going to leave, somebody had to cover.
Correct.
After that, you personally called two of your other colleagues who were not on duty that night to respond with you to Brian Albert's house, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you previously
Why?
testified, I believe, that Sergeant Michael Lank was one of those officers, and he arrived at 6:25 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And then Lieutenant Paul Gallagher was the other officer, and he arrived closer to 7 a.m., correct?
Yes.
When you responded to 34th Fairview on January 29th, did you know that residence?
Yes.
And what did you know that residence to be?
I knew that to be Brian Albert's house.
You and Sergeant Lank had both been to that residence before, correct?
No.
Together.
Actually, we have. We were there for a police report years ago.
And so
All right,
when
so you have been
decided
there.
to respond to the scene on January 29th, that residence of 34 Fairview, you knew exactly where you were going.
Yes.
And when you got there, you knew you were outside the home of Boston Police Officer Brian Albert, correct?
Yes.
And this was a memorable event. Would you agree with me?
Yes.
Before January 29th of 2022, you had never responded to a call where the body of one police officer was found on the front lawn of another police officer's house, correct?
Yes.
And at some point after you arrived, you saw both Sergeant Lank and Detective Gallagher arrive, correct?
Yes.
It was Sergeant Lank who first entered the home and made initial contact with Brian Albert and his family.
No, I was right next to him.
So is it your testimony that the first time the police went in the house, you were there with Sergeant Lank?
Yes.
You
And
were next
when
to
you went
him,
in, can I have
arm in
the
arm?
date on the screen, please?
arm in arm with Mr. Link entering the home to just ask a couple of questions. No one's under arrest. No one's under investigation. We're just gathering information about the dead man on your front yard.
Oh, terrific. You're able to see Exhibit 8?
Yes.
Can we see it?
Is that a fair depiction of what the house looked like
Oh.
when
It's just the
you
house.
entered it?
Yes.
Did you see the front door?
Yes.
Is that the door that you entered?
Yes.
And you
Is that the
testified that
door
you,
that they
you know, looked
usually
around
enter?
the immediate area where you were while Sergeant Lank was asking questions. You
Or they
noticed
typically go through the
that when you
garage.
entered that front door, you come into a foyer area, and directly in front of you on the left, you can almost reach out and touch. There's a door that goes down to the cellar. Is there not?
I don't know. I don't remember a door there. I remember the stairs going up to the second floor.
I see. So you don't remember that as you step into the house, you can go down a cellar door right away.
Objection.
No, I don't know where the cellar is.
The objection sustained.
You don't know where the cellar is, and that's in part because you did not go down to the cellar, correct?
Correct.
You never examined it?
No.
You never saw what condition it was in?
No.
Saw whether there was any signs of struggle down there?
No.
Never saw if anything was tipped over?
No.
You never saw whether there was any blood or other trace evidence down there?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained. You've made your point. Can we turn the lights back on, please? Do you need this, Ms. Giannetti?
I do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
He's like, yeah, let me take this. Let me drink some water. Things.
Okay, now going back to when you first arrived, Sergeant,
getting
you were
hot.
alone in your cruiser, correct?
Yes.
You weren't driving with a partner that morning?
No.
You were the second officer on scene?
No. Third.
Who got there before you did?
Officer Saraf and Officer Mulaney.
Okay, so Mulaney actually beat you there?
Yes.
Yeah,
But
he was-
only within a matter of minutes, correct?
Laney was there.
Sure.
He helped.
You arrived in your marked cruiser,
He
correct?
said he
Yes.
helped
You had
get
the overhead
John
emergency
on the
lights on,
scoop
correct?
stretcher.
Correct.
You pulled up right in the front of the house, facing in the wrong direction in terms of the lane that you were in?
Correct.
You were parked on Fairview, adjacent to the Albert residence, and you were facing towards Cedar Crest, correct?
Correct.
When you parked, you left your motor running, correct?
Yes.
And when you got out of your cruiser, one prominent sound that you heard was Karen Reed screaming at the top of her lungs, correct?
Yes.
She appeared to be in distress.
Correct.
She appeared to be crying.
I did not see her crying.
She was hysterical.
Yes.
She was very loud.
Yes.
And you could hear her yelling throughout that morning, could you not?
Correct.
After you got there, other emergency vehicles showed up?
No.
Did you see any other cruisers show up?
If you want to call it an unmarked detective pickup truck, a cruiser, sure.
Okay, so there was one
Okay.
additional police vehicle that showed up?
Sergeant Lang arrived in that, and then Lieutenant Paul Gallagher arrived in his unmarked cruiser.
Okay, so two
Are they
additional
still?
vehicles. and also Officer
Not considered
Saraf's
like, are
vehicle
they
was there?
not emergency
Laney's,
vehicles?
correct.
And Mulaney. So we're now up to 4 police vehicles on scene.
Yes.
They all have their lights on?
No, Detective Sergeant Langs does not have any lights in it, and neither did Paul Gallagher's lights were not activated, I believe.
I see. So you and Saraf and Mulaney have your lights on?
Correct.
And I actually miscounted. That would be 5 police vehicles, correct?
Sure.
All right. 3 with their lights on. What about ambulances?
There were 2 ambulances that showed up, one for the first transport of Officer O'Keefe and second for Miss Reed, but they were never there at the same time.
All right. When you first got there, was the first ambulance there?
It was.
Yeah.
And that ambulance
saw
also had its lights on?
Yes,
How many fire trucks were there when you were there?
just one.
And that also had its lights on as well?
Correct.
And engine
Of
running?
course.
Yes.
And
course.
everyone was essentially parked
It's low visibility.
around
You
and
need
in
the
front of
lights.
34 Fairview, correct?
It
Correct.
just so happens
And
if
all the while,
anyone
the
is
first
driving around.
responders are talking over the noise of the storm, correct?
Yes.
And they're also talking over the screaming by Karen Reed, correct?
Sure.
At one point,
Okay.
Carrie Roberts
Say
even
sure
yelled
one more
at Karen,
time.
and I apologize for the language, but she yelled at her to shut the fuck up, correct?
I have no idea. I don't recall that.
The scene was very chaotic.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. Could I have exhibit 16 on the screen, please? Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry. Okay. Now, this has previously been admitted as sort of a side-to-side comparison between your cruiser dash cam and Officer Saraf's dash cam.
Okay.
And they've been synchronized.
Okay.
If we could start at 9 minutes in, please.
So, Ms. Giannetti, this is not yet in evidence.
I had it as exhibit 16, am I
Right.
correct?
Right. So it's not in yet.
I see. With regard,
Hold on for me for just 1 second. Okay, sorry guys. I just had to do a little work chit chat. So let's get back into
prior
this.
to
So there,
your dash cam, sir, do you recognize the
but I didn't want to miss it.
bottom,
I didn't want to miss
video here as depicting your view as you were driving to the scene?
Sure.
And that appears to be a fair and accurate representation of what was shown to you on direct examination with regard to your dash cam?
Yes.
You can continue.
Okay. I thought this was already in evidence because this is a split screen. You're seeing the EMT or someone grab a blanket or towel or something. The top left to center. I believe he was just put into, I believe John was just put into the ambulance at this point.
Okay, you can pause it there. Would you agree with me, Sergeant Good, that you were arriving on scene at approximately 6:16 a.m. on January 29th?
Yes.
And I'd ask you to review and compare your dash cam video with the top dash cam video for the next 30 seconds or a minute, please. And I'll ask some questions after that.
Sure.
Is it possible? Sergeant Good, does it appear as though the top dash cam shows the exact same thing as the bottom dash cam, just from a different vantage point?
Yes.
Wait for another 20, 30 seconds.
Was there are we gonna get to tampering with like the dash cam footage? Is that what's happening here?
Were you able to see when people are moving, or when somebody's moving in the top version, they're also moving in the bottom version, just again from different vantage points?
Yes.
So did these both appear to be fair and accurate representations of the dash cams that were going on at that time?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay, I'd like to see Counselor Ziba for just 1 second on this.
All right, we're gonna boot Scoot and Boogie because
We had it as a placeholder from before, Exhibit 16. So this will now become Exhibit 16. We had it as a placeholder from before. It was 379, and on Friday, we said that it would stay as 16, assuming it was put in evidence. That's what you have, Tori and Jim? Great.
okay, they sorted that out.
Okay, we can take that off the screen. Thank you. Now, Sergeant Good, you testified that you got there at about 6:16 a.m. and relying on Exhibit 16 that I placed before you, correct?
Okay. Yes.
You stayed on scene for over an hour and 40 minutes. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
You left maybe around 7:50 a.m. or so?
Correct.
And during the beginning
Wow.
part of the 1 hour and 40 minutes that you were on scene,
Just in time to get back and
with
clock
all
out.
the vehicles that we've just seen at
At
around
8?
6:16 a.m. and for the first 10, 15 minutes with all those lights flashing, you never saw Brian Albert come out of his house, correct?
Correct.
And did you see first responders working on John O'Keefe when you were there?
No.
He had
He
already been loaded into the ambulance at that
Just
time?
put into
Correct.
the ambulance.
So you didn't see him actually being scooped up and put on a stretcher, correct?
I don't recall. No, Houston.
And with regard to the remainder of the time that you were on scene, up until all the way through 7:50 in the morning, did you ever see Brian Albert come out of his home?
No.
Did you ever see anyone come out of the Albert residence?
No.
Other than John McCabe and Matt McCabe, no.
Were you aware when you entered the Albert residence that morning that John O'Keefe was found on his front lawn wearing only one shoe, black in color?
I was not aware of him missing a shoe. No.
While you were there, you were listening to the questions that Sergeant Lank was asking Brian Albert?
Yes.
Did you ever hear Sergeant Lank ask Brian Albert that morning if he knew where the other shoe was that was black in color?
Objection.
Sustained.
While
Okay.
you were there, remember hear Sergeant Lank ask
Breathing into the
Brian
microphone.
Albert when he learned that John O'Keefe was lying on his front lawn?
Objection.
Sustained.
You knew that Brian Albert, as a Boston police officer, is a first responder, correct?
Yes.
All police officers are first responders, correct?
Yes.
You know from your training that all police officers have to receive CPR and other necessary training to be first responders, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you ask Brian Albert why he didn't come out of his house?
No.
Did Sergeant Lank in your presence ask him why he didn't come out of his house?
Objection.
Sustained.
After clearing the scene at 7:50 in the morning, did you go back to the station?
I did.
To clock
Do you know
out
whether or
because
not
it's just done
Kevin
at 8.
Albert was working that day?
I don't.
Did you see Kevin Albert that day?
I don't recall seeing him.
Did you speak with Kevin Albert that day?
Did he call out?
Now, since that day, it's been almost 2.5 years. You've continued working on the same police force as Kevin Albert, correct?
Yes,
At some point in time, you and Kevin Albert discussed the fact that you were one of the first responding officers to his brother's home for this tragic incident, correct?
yes,
It's a very unique situation, correct?
yes.
Many officers in the department were interested to know what you saw and heard that day, correct?
Sure.
At
yes
what
or no,
point in time
please.
After January 29th, did Kevin Albert broach the topic with you as to what had happened on January 29th?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
Sure. I don't recall ever immediately talking to Kevin Albert about the incident. No.
Right, well, you had said that you don't recall talking to him that day, but certainly within a couple of weeks, the two of you caught up, correct?
I can't remember. No.
I'm sorry?
I can't recall that. No.
Within a couple of months, you talked about it?
Sure.
And when you say sure, sir,
I-
I take that as you're saying, well, if you really want to go there, I'll give you the sure answer. You have to answer yes or no.
Okay. Yes.
So you answer yes or no if you
Yeah.
can, and if you can't, you can't. So
Right.
ask the question again or just move on, please.
I can't believe she's
Do you
allowing
recall
him to
where
say
you were
to keep saying
when
sure.
you and Kevin Albert discussed what had happened on January 29th?
No.
Do you recall who else was present?
No.
Do you recall whether it was in person or over the phone?
I don't recall. No.
You certainly told him what you observed and heard that day, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you arrived,
Deserves to know what happened
you
on his
were
front
on
lawn.
scene not only to assist with first aid and secure the scene, but as a first responder, your job is to assess the situation and also make an initial determination about gathering evidence. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
You'd be on the lookout for any physical evidence, correct?
Yes.
And you'd certainly be on high alert for any individual who made any statement about what may have occurred, correct?
Correct.
That's important not only for treatment purposes of somebody who apparently is hurt, but also for investigative purposes, correct?
Correct.
And again, you were the third officer on the scene by minutes in terms of the other two officers arriving before you, correct?
Yes.
And while you were on scene for over an hour and 40 minutes, and by the way, when I say on scene, it's clear to you that I'm asking you about 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
There was no scene at the Canton Police Department, correct?
You are
No, I'm
the
talking about
ranking
34th Fairview.
officer
Of course, a scene is where something
until
happened, correct?
someone ranked above
Yes.
you shows up.
While you were on scene at 34 Fairview for an hour and 40 minutes, did you ever once hear Karen Reed say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I did not.
Okay.
And you wrote a report regarding this, correct?
I did.
You are trained over your 18 years that you include every important detail in that report, correct?
Correct.
Certainly a statement by Karen Reed screaming out, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, would have been an important detail that you would have included in your report, correct?
Yes.
You do not intentionally omit, I should say, any important details from your report, correct?
Correct.
Did not include that language, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, in your report, correct?
Correct.
And the reason you didn't include it is that you never heard those words come out of Karen Reed's mouth, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
All
now
right.
getting back to potential
It's like-
physical evidence.
All right. See how
If
easy
you're
that
at
is?
a
Okay.
potential
Yes.
crime scene, you want to find what you can, correct?
Correct.
You want to
Correct.
properly secure any physical
Not
evidence, right?
sure.
Correct.
In order to assist the investigation, you're prepared to conduct a thorough search for evidence that may shed light on what had happened, correct?
Correct.
And you did participate in a thorough search in this case, did you not?
The best we could in the elements that we were dealing with. Yes.
You had previously, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off
Nope.
if I did. You had previously testified, and I think I'm quoting you, the leaf blower work rate, correct?
Yes.
That is a
You
quote.
would agree with me that with
That
that
is a
leaf
quote.
blower, your
Leaf
department
blower
was able
work
to actually
rate.
get down to the bare ground, correct?
Yes.
That's necessary.
And you were directed to the precise area where John O'Keefe had been laying, correct?
Yes.
And so you knew the area that needed to be searched, correct?
Yes.
You certainly want to properly search around that area, correct?
Correct.
And after John O'Keefe was in the ambulance and then transported to the hospital, that was the
I'm
very
doing
area
green.
that you were eyeballing, correct?
Yes.
And you visually searched that area as best you could in the conditions, correct?
Yes.
And you tried to be as careful as you could be.
Yes.
You did not want to miss anything.
Correct.
You did the job very seriously.
Yes.
Now, in addition to scouring the area
Listen
with
to
your
where he
eyes,
goes with this.
did you use your hands to search in the snow?
I don't remember doing that. I was recording it.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember it that way. I was recording the scene.
I see. Okay. Did you see other officers using their hands to search the scene?
I don't recall it that.
Do you recall officers using their feet to clear some areas?
Yes,
Yeah, in the video,
And
we
you
saw
were the one
someone
that actually
touch.
got your leaf
a
blower,
blood spot.
correct?
I did.
First
with their
time you
hands.
ever used that in an investigation.
Winter
fair to
gloved
say?
hands.
Yes.
And
He may not
your
have seen it,
search
so he-
was thorough enough. And when I say your search, I mean your
But he was
department's
recording
search,
the
in addition
video.
to Your observations. It was thorough enough that you actually did recover small droplets of blood, correct?
We did.
Who was it that collected those blood droplets?
That was Lieutenant Gallagher and Sergeant Lang.
In addition to the blood droplets, you were looking for anything else that might be out of place there?
Sure.
Small items,
Of course.
large items?
Anything.
And as you were on scene, it was
Anything.
starting to get lighter as the morning progressed, correct?
Yes.
What did you find?
And again, you didn't clear the
Other
scene
than the
until
drinking
almost 8 a.m.
glass.
Correct.
And you searched and were keeping alert to what was around you for the time that you were on scene, correct?
Yes.
During that that 1 hour, I should say, and 40 minutes, you did not find 45 pieces of red and black and clear taillight pieces at 34th Fifth, correct?
And we got to
No.
it.
How many pieces of taillight did you find on or around that property?
That morning, none.
Did you find a men's hat, black in color?
No.
Did you find a size 12 men's shoe, black in color?
No.
Now, you would agree that it's important to preserve and secure a crime scene?
Yes.
Why is that?
Preserve and
You don't
secure.
want the crime scene to be contaminated.
And you also do not want, and you'd like to prevent the crime scene from also being manipulated. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And what steps were taken, either by you or in your presence, to close off and secure the crime scene at 34th Avenue?
We had crime scene tape up while we were there, and then we also had Officer Mulaney on the road.
And when you say you had Officer Mulaney on the road, you mean blocking off
Yeah.
the road?
Correct.
Are you aware of something called a crime scene log?
No.
You recall being trained in the academy that when there is a crime scene that needs to be preserved, it is advisable to set up a log so that all personnel are required to sign in and sign out. Again, to prevent contamination and to prevent manipulation. Do you not recall that training?
I don't recall that, no.
You don't
With
recall a
regard to
crime
the
scene
fact
log
that It was
training?
actively snowing at the time. Did you consider putting a tent around the area to prevent and minimize the environmental intrusions like the snow?
It would have been useless.
Did you utilize any heaters to assist in melting the snow in that area?
No.
And before you cleared the scene, or I should say when you cleared the scene, did you post an officer to guard the scene so that nobody could get in or out?
No.
How long was the road closed off for?
While we were there, so those 2 hours.
And then after the 2 hours, there was nobody guarding the scene. Would you agree?
Yes, correct.
The road was not closed off.
No.
That crime scene was open to the public.
Correct.
So with regard to know,
These are good
a
questions.
crime scene log,
These are good questions.
a tent, heaters, keeping an officer there to make sure nobody got in or out of that crime scene. You would agree none of those protocols were followed, correct?
I don't believe there is a protocol for a tent in our policy.
Okay. So I guess leave the tent out of it. None of
Okay.
those other protocols were followed, correct?
Correct.
And certainly a tent was not put up either.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to your police report, going back to that, your report clearly listed persons involved in the case, correct?
Correct.
And that police report is generated by computer software, correct? That's
Yes.
particular to police reports?
Correct.
And that's one of the categories that you can fill in, correct?
Correct.
And would you agree with me that with regard to all of the persons involved listed in your police report, everybody's first name and last name was completely spelled out except for one? Would you agree with that?
I don't. I
Ooh.
believe those names were entered by Detective Sergeant Lang.
Okay, but certainly
Okay,
the
but it's-
report
it's
has your
your
name on
police
it, correct?
Correct.
So you would review the report before
Sure.
submitting it in your name, correct?
Correct.
So regardless of who entered or didn't enter, my question remains, which is that with regard to the persons involved listed in that report, everybody's name, first and last, is spelled out except for one, correct?
Correct.
Whose name was not spelled out completely?
I don't know.
May I approach?
Okay.
Page 2, Counsel. And I just
Thank
ask
you.
you to look at it silently and then look up at me when you're done. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
When you reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to whose name was not completely spelled out?
Correct.
Who was that?
Brian Albert.
Brian Albert. Could you imagine? Who didn't see that coming? I already wrote it down.
Omit Brian Albert's first name to mask the fact that he was involved?
No. No.
Do you know who Colin Albert is?
I know that he is Chris Albert's son.
And so therefore he'd be Brian Albert's nephew?
Yes.
Anywhere in your report, do you mention that Colin Albert was present at 34 Fairview the night of January 28th going into January 29th?
No.
Was he present
Now,
at 34
Would you
Fairview?
agree with me that this report also lists home addresses for everyone in the persons involved section, except for one person?
Can I see the sheet again, please? Thank you.
This is the same, if I may approach,
Yes.
this is the same sheet that I sent you last time.
Thank you.
She's like, yeah, like,
Time with it, sir.
he literally requested you to, but she needs to answer and he needs to ask. I don't think it would have been a big deal if he approached without asking. She probably wouldn't even like. She's got so much
And
other stuff
Sergeant, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What am I talking about?
Brian Higgins.
Okay. So with regard to Brian Higgins, his home address was not listed on there, correct?
Correct.
And what address was listed for Brian Higgins?
1492 Washington Street.
And what is significant about that address?
It's the town of Canton.
It's the Town of Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Now, Brian Higgins was not an involved person because he was an investigator on the case, correct?
Correct.
He was not involved in this case in an official capacity, correct?
Correct.
You were, right?
Yes.
So listing the Canton Police Department as Sergeant Sean Good's address would be appropriate. Would you agree?
Yes.
Why was Brian Higgins' address listed as the Canton Police Department?
I don't know.
But that is something that you kept in your report, correct?
Correct.
But that is something you kept in your report. Why though? You don't know, or you don't want to tell us?
Okay. Now, I also want to ask you something else about your police report. And I want to focus on whether it was altered after it was first submitted, okay?
Was it edited?
If I can,
Hold on. Do you have your report with you?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have a copy for him, Ms. Gianetti?
She's like, enough with the back and forth. Just give him the damn report. he probably hasn't looked at it. In over
Yes,
like a
sure.
year
Go
and a
ahead.
half.
No, that's okay.
I've placed a document before you. Feel free to familiarize yourself with it. And please look up at me when you're done.
Wow.
Does that appear to be your police report, sir?
Yes.
Now, and with the court's permission, I'd actually
Was it
like the officer
edited?
to have the report in front of him when I ask him these questions.
Okay. But nothing's going up on the screen, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So approach before it does.
I will, I promise.
Okay.
Okay,
I
so
promise.
I'm directing your attention
She's
to the
like,
first
okay.
page.
Okay.
You will
I think the
agree with me
relationship
that
between the judge
this,
and the defense
report
attorneys
is submitted with regard to incident
eased
number
a wee bit.
22-87-4F.
It was very tense.
Correct.
Like
And
day
this is
2 and
call
3.
number 22-449, correct?
You came in hot.
The date and time reported is listed as January 29th of 2022 at 06:08, correct?
Correct.
Which would be in military time, 6:08 a.m.
Correct.
The report date and time is listed as January 29th of 2022.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. So why don't we come to sidebar now?
She's like, let me see this damn thing. She's like, before we go any further, let's talk. And Karen's like, I want to know what you're saying. Let's talk about Karen for a minute. She does not emote a lot. We did see her do a little eye roll. I don't know who that was addressed to because I did not see who she was looking at, but I have a feeling it was addressed to the witness before Sean Good. What was his name? Paul Gallagher. He was on the stand for a long time. I honestly would probably have given him an eye roll as well. So I feel it. She is a person, guilty or not guilty, framed or murderer. She is still a person, and emotions still happen. And fixing your face for many days in a row is very exhausting. So she has been doing a pretty good job when it comes to her emotions, her posture, her exhaustedness with this whole thing, her frustration, her being so physically close to John's family right now must be so intimidating. She could literally reach out and touch them. They are able to stare her down. You could probably feel them breathe. You can hear them move their feet. You can hear them talk. You can hear them whisper. They are so incredibly close to her, like physically close. Like they are within feet of her. Because of how small this courtroom is, I am sure it is extremely uncomfortable, more so than in like a typical courtroom that you would see where you have the two tables, the separation, the judge and the audience, having quite some distance from behind, and the jury on the side. She's not able to get a good look at the jury, which is I would say very frustrating, because you want to be able to sort of gauge and see how everything is going by the jurors' faces. It's so important. I have the ability to emote and scream and yell and pause and go back and take the notes that I want and talk with you watching. The jurors are only there silently watching, taking quick notes. That's all they can do. They cannot talk about this. They cannot talk about this with other jurors. They cannot talk about this with anybody. They cannot do their own research. They cannot look up things. They cannot try to figure anything out. They are only given the information in this courtroom. And even us, we have the privilege of watching, voir dires, or before the jury comes in, there's the conversations and the getting things on the record. And after the jury leaves, there's the same thing, the wrap up of the day, the what to expect tomorrow. We get that, and the jury doesn't. So we get even more just sitting here and watching than the jury does, on top of being able to have the conversations. And where that tape is that you just saw next to that man in the suit, that is the cut off for the jury.
Okay, so the same three cautions. Please do not discuss this case with
So
anyone.
they are facing
Don't do
the
any
witness.
independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this
I'm
case,
sure there is
please
space in
disregard
between
advice.
the audience and the jury a little bit. So no one can read their notes.
Goodbye.
What are we doing?
Tomorrow morning's a holiday. About this case, search or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard advice. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's a holiday.
Oh, okay. So this is the end of Monday for the jury. It looks like they are going to do a bit of a voir dire. On this next witness, or on the witness they need to voir dire before the start of tomorrow. They have some things that they need to get on the record. They have some things that they need to sort out. They have some things that those additional photos about Katie came out Katie and Caitlin, they have some
All
stuff
right,
to do,
so
so we
someone
are
needs
still
to
here in
get
court.
Sergeant Lang for you. Okay, so the voir dire, I thought that we would have finished this earlier and I'd be able to give you more time, but I suggested 10, 15 minutes. Mr. Jackson tells me that's fine for him and the Commonwealth as well. So what I'd like to do is 10 minutes would be great from each of you, and then I'll hear argument.
She's like, I want to go
because
home
it means now I'm
too.
keeping the staff longer than necessary. So, all right.
Is he here?
He's your witness.
He is. They were getting him.
Yeah, that's right.
He's your witness. Okay, this is the voir dire of Sergeant Lank. It's sort of just like a preview for the court to see what they are going to ask him, what they are trying to get. They've talked to the court about what they want to get out of him. And she is basically going to be able to approve what can be asked and the answers, and there's so much happening with this case when it comes to the investigation of it, when it comes to the prosecution. There's so many different levels of a court system handling different parts of this very specific case outside of this very trial. So there's things that can and can't come into this case about the other investigations that are happening about this case. So there's things that can come in, there's things that can't come in, and this is a voir dire of the questions that they are going to be asking and what they are expecting to get in trial in front of the jury. So this is interesting. We get like a little preview. I don't know if anyone watched the Alec Murdaugh case. You see where that tape is? And then on this side here, where these chairs are, where they're walking in, that's where the jury is, where they leave that little space. And so those nice comfy chairs for the jury.
The court in the case now we're hearing from the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
And he's like, and that's my job.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us late in the afternoon, Sergeant Lank. I'm going to direct your
I hate
attention
it
to your relationship with the Albert family and some of the members of the Albert family. Do you know who Tim Albert is?
Yes.
Do you know who Chris Albert is?
Okay, I'm going to go into normal speed because they are already talking fast to please the court. They want to skedaddle through this. So I'm going to put it into normal speed, and immediately they are talking about the relationship between him and the Albert family, which some of the Albert family lived in 34 Fairview.
Albert is.
Yes.
So I'm just going to go back.
It's late in the afternoon, Sergeant Lank. I'm going to direct your attention to your relationship with the Albert family and some of the members of the Albert family. Do you know who Tim Albert is?
Yes.
Do you know who Chris Albert is?
Yes.
Do you know who Brian Albert?
Interrupt, I just need your name.
I'm so sorry. Can you please state your name?
He's like,
spell
I just
your
wanted
name
to go
for the
fast
record?
for you. My
Michael
apologies.
Lank, L-A-N-K.
Oh,
Michael,
L-A-N.
common spelling?
Yes,
I'll start over.
Sure.
Do you know who Tim Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Chris Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Brian Albert is?
I do.
How do you know Tim Albert?
I know Tim Albert to be one of the younger brothers of the Albert family
How long have you known Tim?
since childhood.
What
Oh,
about Chris
grew up
Albert?
together.
Yes, I know Chris
How long have you known Chris?
since childhood.
And how would you describe your relationship with Chris Albert?
Chris and I were pretty good friends growing up, right into our 20s. Still friendly when I see him.
Still socialize with him?
No.
When did you last socialize with Chris Albert?
I couldn't tell you the last time I personally socialized with him. I've seen him at events, but
Yeah.
Chris and I don't make arrangements to go out together.
What about
Okay.
Brian Albert?
No.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
Civil,
Civil. Oh,
Friendly?
exchange pleasantries when I see him. Hello.
But you're closer to Chris.
Yes.
Have you ever described yourself as being a longtime, quote unquote, drinking buddy with Chris?
No.
Would you describe yourself previously in years past as being a drinking buddy of Chris.
No,
Have you ever gone out for
I
drinks
don't
with
believe
Chris?
that.
not in years.
Ever?
Okay. Just, I'm going, ever.
Yes,
So you've socialized with him in circumstances in which y'all are drinking and imbibing.
it's been many years, but yes.
Your relationship with Chris
Nothing happened.
certainly goes all the way back to 2002.
Again, we were friendlier back then, yes.
Back in 2002 in August, while you were off duty, were you out either drinking with Chris or in some way at a restaurant or a bar with Chris?
No,
Were you close in proximity to Chris when he was out drinking and at a bar?
no,
Was he at a restaurant?
Did you guys end up
I
at
don't
the
know where he
same
was.
restaurant together?
Were you at a bar?
I was.
At some point,
What happened?
did you realize that Chris was getting into some sort of a physical altercation with somebody else in a parking lot?
Yes,
Did you
Okay.
jump into a fist fight in order to protect Chris Albert?
Chris actually approached my vehicle and started to describe an altercation that had been in previously in the night.
When you say your vehicle, your personal vehicle?
Yes,
Okay, so you were off duty, is that right?
yes,
You've been drinking?
yes,
Nothing wrong
Were
with
you
that, but
driving?
Just
Yes.
so happens that you've been drinking that afternoon.
Just want the
Yes.
truth.
Tim Albert was with Chris, correct?
not when I saw him, no.
Okay.
Did you learn to know that he was?
When you realized that Chris Albert was in some sort of fracas, some sort of fight or altercation, you activated yourself as a police officer at the time.
He wasn't in a fracas when he approached my vehicle. He approached my vehicle and stated that he had been in an altercation earlier in the night with one of the Lapalato brothers, and that during that
Lapalato?
altercation, threats were made against him and his family, and he was seeking advice because he knew I was a police officer as to how he should go forward. And as I was telling him what to do, that's when a group of men started to walk down Washington Street towards Chris, and he said, "Oh no, here they come."
Oh
So
no,
that was
here
Mark
they come.
Lapalato, correct?
Yes,
And his brother Alfred.
yes, Alfredo.
Alfredo, sorry. You got out of your car and approached the other men.
Yes.
You also called for a Canton police backup.
I brought my attention to the restaurant owner and a bartender who had walked out into the street, and I yelled for them to call the Canton police.
Canton police did in fact arrive, correct?
They did.
Isn't it true that after you got involved and Canton police arrived, you then instructed some of your colleague police officers to handcuff Alfredo?
I can't recall.
Yeah,
Isn't it true that
I'm sure
after Alfredo was handcuffed and for all intents and purposes physically incapacitated, you then approached Mark Lapalato.
No.
You got into a fight with Mark Lapalato, though.
Yes.
You punched him in the face.
At one point after he had struck me, yes.
So your story is he struck you first, and then you punched him.
Yes.
His story, of course, is you punched him first.
I don't know what his story is.
Well,
You know
were
what
sued
his
in federal
story
court,
is.
And he told you his story in that lawsuit, correct?
Shit. Oh shit.
So I actually have a question. The criminal,
Oh my God. That's awesome. That was incredible. I don't know this information when you were sued in federal court. I gotta go back. I'm so that was the best thing.
You punched him.
yes.
His story, of course, is you punched him first.
Sure.
I don't know what his story is.
Well, you were sued in federal court, and he told you his story in that lawsuit, correct?
So
You don't remember
I actually have a question. The criminal case was adjudicated. The civil case, I did sign a non-disclosure, so I'm not sure if I can speak on that.
I will never ask you what the nature of any settlement within that case was. Just the fact that you were sued in a public document, which a federal lawsuit is a public document.
Yes, it is
You were sued in federal court over this incident that I'm talking about, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
And ultimately it was settled. I'll never ask you what the terms of the settlement are. 'Cause that's
it was settled, yes.
Okay. Ultimately, you
You
said
know
that the
his story.
criminal case was adjudicated. We'll get to that in just a second. Did you testify at that
It's
criminal case?
incredible.
I did.
All right. I want to sort of tailor this a little bit because we're on a little bit of a time crunch and I want to be sensitive to the court's time and your time.
If I was
The
carrying
allegation that Mark
pissing
Lopalato
and
made against
shitting
you is that
myself.
you punched him, took him to the ground, continued to beat him, and bit him to the point of drawing blood, correct?
I believe that was his allegation, yes.
He then indicated that once the police officers that were there pulled you off of him, you then turned and walked over to Alfredo while he was still incapacitated, meaning physically handcuffed, and spat in his face.
I believe that was his allegation, yes.
Ultimately,
Good
both
answer
men,
for that.
after this
Oh, just-
altercation, were allowed to leave the location, correct?
I believe one fled and the other one was allowed to leave, yes.
Okay. You're telling me now that Mark Lopalito punched you first, the police officer, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware of any circumstance in which an individual would be able to punch a police officer on duty or off duty in the presence of other police officers and just be released? That wouldn't happen, would it?
I don't believe the other police officers were on scene when the fight initiated.
Did you
What?
tell them that you got punched?
Tell him? Yeah, because if you said it,
I don't
they'd be
recall.
like, oh,
They
okay.
certainly let Mark go, correct?
Mark fled.
Okay. And then
Alfredo was released.
so the next day, Mark and Alfredo showed up at Canton PD to file a complaint against you and some of the other police officers that were involved, correct?
That's what I was told. I wasn't there.
You didn't
Yo,
file a
sometimes small
report
towns are too
for
small.
assault, for battery, or anything like that, correct?
I spoke with my sergeant that night and he said that I could do the report when I came back in on my next day of work.
My question is, on that night, did you file a report?
No,
The next day, did you file a report?
I don't recall if it was 1 or 2 days later.
It's actually 3 days later, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Does it sound like
Well, I am.
that's
I have the
in the
paper.
time frame, it probably was about 3 days later.
I honestly couldn't tell you. It's 22 years ago. I'm not really sure.
But between the time this fight happened and you filed a report, Mark Lopalito and his brother Alfredo came into Canton PD and asked to swear out a complaint against you and fellow officers, correct?
I believe so.
And they were told to go away on that day.
I couldn't speak to that.
By the time they came back to file the complaint, then police reports had been written, right?
I don't know.
Once those police reports were written, after they indicated that they wanted to file a complaint, ultimately charges were brought against them, correct?
Again, ultimately charges were brought. I don't know the exact timeline.
Oh my God. I mean,
After
this is-
charges had been brought, and both brothers ended up having to go to court and defend themselves, you ran into both brothers at a mobile gas station.
Yes.
You confronted both brothers, correct?
No.
You approached both brothers.
No.
Isn't it true that you walked up and said, "How you doing?" to the two guys?
Did you approach
And one of
them?
them responded, "Not so good. You attacked me and now I've got to go to court."
No,
That conversation?
I believe they initiated the conversation with me.
Did you say,
Do we
"How are you
have
doing?"
security footage?
Something to that nature.
And did they respond? Something to the effect of, "I'm not doing so good because you attacked me and now I've got to defend myself in court."
I don't recall exactly what they said
Judges getting
in
antsy.
response.
Gotta wrap this up.
And then, based on that interaction, you arrested them for witness intimidation, correct?
Well, there
LOL.
was further interaction. It wasn't just the response to "how are you doing?" They made threats and they were ultimately arrested, yes.
So your claim now is that they made threats against you, a sitting police officer at the time. a
He's
working
got
police
angry
officer.
face.
Yes,
Okay, and you reported that threat to the DA's office,
Angry face.
yes,
and charges were brought against them. I'm sorry. A report was brought against them for that witness intimidation, correct?
correct.
Ultimately, with regard to the assault charges for which they were arrested and tried, they were found not guilty in a public adjudication criminal case, correct?
Correct.
And the DA's office threw out the witness intimidation charges because they were meritless. Isn't that right?
Ooh.
The charges were thrown out.
And all of this history that we've just talked about came on the heels of you assisting Chris and Tim Albert in a fight they said they had been in earlier in the evening. Is that right?
No,
You just told us that the
You
reason
just
you got involved in this melee, this fight to begin with, was because
Melee.
Chris Albert approached you and
Testing all
said,
the words. See his
I
reaction.
was in a fight with some guys earlier tonight, and here they come.
Yes, and you just said that he was with Tim Albert. I never saw Tim Albert that night.
My mistake. Let's just
My
leave it at
He was with his fiance.
Okay. So all of this situation emanated from you coming to the aid of Chris Albert, your friend, longtime childhood friend, correct?
It had nothing to do with
Police
it
are
being
the
Chris
ultimate
Albert.
I don't know what is. If the police are
Isn't
the
it true that
ultimate
it had
cult, I don't know
everything
what
to do
is.
with it being Chris Albert?
No,
So just a regular random guy off the street, you would have conducted yourself the exact same way.
absolutely.
I don't believe that for a minute, especially if you've been drinking. I'm off duty. call
Isn't it
the
true
cops.
that
I'm
what
off
you
duty. It's
actually
probably the
did,
vibe I was gonna
Sergeant
get.
Blank, in that
If
particular
I-
circumstance, was
if
you
I walked
came
up
to
to
the aid of
him
a friend,
and he's been drinking and he's off duty, and I said someone's trying to, blah blah blah. We just got into a brawl. He'd be like, "Call the cops. I'm off duty." Right? That's what I feel. That's just my assumption. That's just my a belief. Especially if he'd been drinking.
and you used your
I believe
position as a police
Might
officer.
remember the jury's
to
not
further
here right
that
now.
assistance and that protection.
No.
He wants to be
That's
able
all I
to
have, Your Honor.
prove
Okay.
in front of
Still
the
Ally?
jury that it runs deep, especially with the Albert family. It runs deep. The having each other's back, the preserving the good
Whatever
word
happened
of
between
the Albert family
Christopher Albert
runs deep.
and these brothers on that particular evening, you weren't present for that?
No.
And your testimony that Tim Albert wasn't present at any point in time when you were there either, correct?
No.
Now, with regard to Tim Albert, what, if any, other involvement have you had with him as far as through your official duties as a police officer?
I was involved in an investigation where we had to take out charges against Tim Albert.
So you've been involved in an investigation where charges were actually taken out against a member of the Albert family, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall roundabout when that was?
I believe it was 2012.
Do you recall who, if anyone, from your department was working with you on that investigation?
It would have been Officer Good at the time.
That's now
Oh,
Sergeant
interesting.
Sean Good, is that correct?
That's correct.
Interesting.
And Sean Good involved in this case, correct?
Correct.
You brought that up though.
Now, with regard to the federal suit that was brought, that was settled, correct?
That's correct.
There was no disposition on it, no finding of liability or anything of the like.
Correct.
Now, with respect to Brian, how would you describe your
Settle down.
relationship with him?
Again, civil.
The two of you friends?
It's gonna love you from that
Can you
word.
repeat that, please?
Are the two of you friends?
No.
You socialize with Brian Albert, have you at any point in time?
I've been at events where Brian is at and we will say hello, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
Something happened between him and
Have you ever
Brian.
socialized with Brian Albert, just the two of you?
No,
Never been to his house or inside his house?
no,
Now, with regard to, other than that day of January 29, 2022, correct?
correct.
You and Brian Albert, do you get along?
We'll say that again?
I said, he and Brian Albert, do they get along?
You need to speak
We have had
loudly.
some disagreements, I'd say, in the past, but
Yeah, I'm gonna
we're-
say.
again, we're
Told you.
civil.
Something
We get along enough to say
Something
hello.
happened. You don't say I'm civil.
Anything to do with
It's nothing
your
happened.
response?
What happened?
Your interviews or anything to do with January 29th, 2022, have anything to do with the Albert family or Brian Albert or Christopher Albert or anything to do with the Alberts whatsoever?
No,
That didn't change what you were doing, how you were doing it, or how you conducted yourself in this investigation. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Nothing further.
Okay,
I have one slight area to cover with the court's permission.
okay.
Concerning Tim Albert, and this issue,
Talk about Tim, the baby brother.
or the investigation where charges were brought against Tim Albert, that was a circumstance in which Tim Albert, in broad daylight, slammed into a parked car belonging to a woman and then fled the scene, correct?
What?
No,
Didn't you follow a trail of transmission fluid or something to find where he had gone?
I did.
And he fled directly to 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
He didn't live there. He went to his brother's house. Brian,
No, that's not correct.
he lived there at the time?
Yes.
Okay. So you follow the trail of whatever it is, fluid trail, all the way to where Tim Albert had fled to, and you basically had no choice. He had just slammed into the back of a car and then fled the scene. Isn't that right?
I concluded my investigation by locating the vehicle that had heavy damage.
Right, the vehicle that he hit.
His vehicle.
His vehicle had heavy damage, but so did the vehicle that he hit, correct?
So what you had said a minute ago that he hit a parked car. That's incorrect.
Oh, he hit a moving car.
It was a vehicle that was, I believe it was stopped at a light. It wasn't a parked car. It was a vehicle that was stopped.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Irrespective of whether the engine was running or parked or not, he hit a car
Yes.
with a woman in it.
What
fled
an
the
ass.
scene, then you find him trying to hide out at 34 Fairview, correct?
He had parked the car at 34 Fairview.
No,
Well,
he
you didn't have
fled.
much choice. I mean, there you have it. The evidence is right in front of you. You can't really cover that one up, right?
I would say I did my
Objection,
job.
Your Honor, move to strike.
So this is voir dire. Could you answer the question, please?
I would say I did my job.
Okay. Did you engage in any kind of a DUI investigation?
We spoke with him.
Did you give him FSTs?
I don't recall if I did. I know I didn't. I don't recall if Officer Good did.
Did you give him a breathalyzer?
I did not.
Did you ask him for a blood test?
I did not.
So no DUI investigation was really undertaken, correct?
Again, I can't recall what Officer Good did, but I was there.
But you didn't do it. You didn't do what I just suggested, a full-blown DUI investigation, even though he hit another car and then fled the scene.
We spoke with him and he gave an explanation.
And that explanation coming from Tim Albert was, I'm really sorry I panicked, right?
It was something to that nature.
And he turned around, well, I'll just cut to the chase. Y'all ended up charging him with a misdemeanor, correct?
Sorry,
I believe
that's
so.
And he was given
that is
diversion,
crazy.
I don't know.
and his record was wiped clean.
I don't know.
Yo,
That's
I'm
all I
done.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant. You can step down, sir.
Thank you.
I'll hear you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I can't. That
I'll
is
be very
just
brief. I spoke about the Aguiar case a couple of days ago, and I think it's still attendant to our conversation today or discussion today. That case stands for the proposition that it doesn't matter if the evidence reveals something other than something that's otherwise inadmissible, as long as the material as long as the
we're moving on to the Katie McLaughlin photos that we just got. So he's just putting on record. She moves very fast, and she wants to go home. Are these cops that incompetent? Like, this is why they get a bad rep. Exactly. Because they're real confident. They're real confident until the shit comes out, right? Until the papers comes out, until people start getting Freedom of Information Act paperwork and documents about the accident that happened, 8 blocks away. But the cop kid, the Albert son, fled. Oh, I was scared. Really? Your daddy's a cop. You're fine. But yeah. This is my problem. This is my problem right here. These cops, especially in the small town where I'm going to say is money. It is a small town, but I'm pretty sure it has a high, like I would say middle to upper middle class residency. I don't know that for sure, but that's just kind of what I'm assuming. Yeah, they have, this is where corruption kind of like thrives in behind the bushes. We can clearly see corruption in towns and cities when it comes to police officers and lower and middle government. When it comes to towns that have a like middle, low middle, and lower class residency, it's put on plain view. What are they going to do about it? It's put on plain view. They don't hide the corruption. They don't hide the isms, the racisms, the all of the isms that come into play with corrupted police. In high middle class, higher class towns, the corruption exists behind closed doors, right? So yeah, the cops are going to show up. They'll follow the trail of transmission fluid, and they'll knock on the door and they'll take a report, but they're not going to do a DUI test. They're not going to give him any felony charges for fleeing an accident. They're not going to give him felony charges, and of course they're going to wipe it clean the moment they can. And the way the corruption is able to continue to flood the system is if everyone is on board. Everyone's on board. But the moment someone brings it to the attention of the public, like Turtle Boy here, then we get an extreme reaction to something like this. What could have been shoved under the couch and forgotten about, Karen Reed going to jail for quite possibly the rest of her life for killing her cop boyfriend, allegedly, without Turtle Boy or just the energy of the public coming in and saying, hold on, this isn't making sense. Let's ask some questions. And Karen standing firm on her innocence. There's a lot happening here. And the more and more officers and first responders we see, we are able to see the little bits of corruption that they all have a hand in playing. Now, is it going to actually lead to them framing Karen, or was she guilty? And it just so happens that they are pulling out all of this information of corruption over time, and they're going to look bad anyway. We don't know. But let's get on to this part. We're almost done with the day.
Well, the material elaborates on or establishes that there could be some sort of bias or prejudice. There doesn't have to be a bias or prejudice. I don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt or to clear and convincing evidence that there's a bias or prejudice. But if the evidence suggests that there could be bias or prejudice, that is proper fodder for the jury to consider, and that's what we're asking. In this case, Sergeant Lang's willingness to activate himself as an officer, get involved with Chris Albert, although it was
maybe
in
not.
2002,
Maybe it's not about
I know
Katie
that's
yet.
something that Mr. Lowley's going to say, and he's going to harp on. This was so long ago. That actually cuts against the Commonwealth case. That shows how long these folks have been involved with each other and how deep their relationships run. For him to sort of deputize himself in that situation in order to help out his longtime friend, whom he socializes with, drinks with, grew up with, establishes a bias and a prejudice, in this case against Miss Reed and in favor of the Alberts. And it's not like he had a tangential part to play in this, a role to play in this investigation. He was the very first officer to walk in that front door. He absolutely knew what he was going to find when he walked in the front door, which was the homeowners and possibly other witnesses. He engaged in a interview or a series of interviews that were not recorded. I have no idea what was said. The jurors are never going to find out exactly what was said other than to take his word for it. Mm-hmm. The jurors have to be able to weigh and balance his credibility against an officer that, for instance, like Sergeant Good, for instance, who seems to come across far more unbiased, just sort of a straight shooter. Sergeant Lang is not that person. He never should have walked in that front door. He should have said to his supervisors, I have a relationship with the Albert family. I've known these folks for too long. I grew up with his brother or brothers. I've known them my whole life. I'm probably not the right person to make the decisions about this investigation. And unless and until the jurors know that and can weigh and balance it, they can toss it out if they want to, or they can adopt it if they want to. So they need to be able to hear the evidence.
So I have a question for you. So the part about the complaint at the station,
yes,
and being turned away, who are you going to get that in from other than the Lapolito brothers, which puts us a little far afield? So he didn't adopt it or said, I don't know, or that's what I've heard.
So the Lapolito brothers, I think.
I know, but that's so far removed now.
I disagree. I think they're the ones that are closest to the situation. So we would ask who's better to tell the jurors that they walked in I can get the police report I can tell the court when it's dated. It's dated September 2nd or September 3rd, and the local leaders walked in on August 31st to make the complaint.
No, I understand because you've outlined it, or Ms. Little outlined it, which is very helpful. I don't disagree that some of this is admissible. I just have to figure out how you intend to get it in, because I have to be concerned about if it's a mini trial within a trial, and we're trying to avoid that.
I think
If he were to testify as he did, that's what I understand, and the Commonwealth didn't object to that. That seems admissible to me.
I would probably seek to do it with the court's permission through two pieces of evidence. One would be Mark or Alfredo, and I don't think I would use both of them.
You would not.
I would not. Okay, fair enough.
She said no, you would just
Mark
use
to
mine.
join us. He would testify to the altercation. He would testify to the complaint, and then I would seek to either get a stipulation to the date of the police
they're already
reports.
on his
I don't even
radar.
need the police reports in. If I can't get a stipulation, then I probably would just ask the court to be able to establish that the police report is a business record.
So I would like to see those police reports tonight before I leave, okay?
If I have them.
You'd have to get them.
Right. I will do my best to get them to the court. I can't get them to the court tonight. We don't have them.
Okay.
So I'll start working on that immediately.
All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, I would submit that defendant has a Metasburn, and there is no actual relevancy to any of this, and it is essentially a trial within a trial at this point. Bringing in other civilian witnesses to talk about an incident which happened 22 years ago to
So
involving...
let's forget about bringing in the civilian witnesses. How about what we heard as to what Sergeant Lank would testify to?
As to what Sergeant Lang would testify to is a single incident in which he did not witness anything to do with the Albert brothers. Christopher Albert was never at 34 Fairview Road on January 28th or until much, much later in the day of January 29th, and certainly not at the same time that Sergeant Lank was. I think counsel far overestimates what Sergeant Lank's involvement in this particular investigation was. He shows up on scene, he assists with the other officers, Lieutenant Gallagher and Sergeant Good that you've already heard from. And with respect to, he takes a couple of initial statements who all those witnesses then subsequently talked to troopers from the state police, testified grand jury, multiple grand juries, and will we all be testifying as witnesses in this case. So any purported bias from an incident from 22 years ago involving a brother who wasn't even present at the home on the night in question does nothing but confuse the jury as to what the issues are.
She's already
and
made her
creating
mind
this
up.
sort of
She just has
bias
to
out
hear
of
him.
thin cloth that has no basis whatsoever in the facts of this case.
Okay, so I disagree with you. I don't know yet. I want to see those police reports. I don't know yet what I'm going to allow
Get her
in, but
those
I
police
disagree
reports.
that it has nothing to do. If it weren't involving the Alberts, then under the grand jury case, the decision by Justice Gantz, Chief Justice Gantz at the time, it wouldn't come in, but it does. So it comes in for different purposes or different reasons. So I'd like those reports tonight or certainly by tomorrow morning before we come out.
We'll do our best.
Okay. All right. So we'll figure this out tomorrow morning. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, please.
All right. So that was not about Katie. That was about Sergeant Lank, which we just watched the voir dire of him. The defense has found, I'm sure they have already made contact with Mark Alfredo, Mark Lapalato. I'm sure he'll spell his name when he gets on the stand, to show the intense level. Time to rewatch. I missed so much today. To show the intense level of history, the lengths they will go to protect each other as police and Albert. They go back far in time. They will protect each other to the end of time. And with it being Lank that went in, Lank, which is, I didn't know, which it being Lank and Good that went into the house and said, "Hey guys, do you guys know they got a dead body outside?" No, not involved. Okay, cool. Have a good night. Bye. That was completely unacceptable. It was not recorded. There's no information. No one knows what was said. Like the defense said, no one will ever know what was said because they will never say. So that is really interesting, and that will be the start after lunch. We are going to take. I'm probably going to be back. Let's see. It's 1:00. I'd say we have probably about 4. So we have a half day. We have Tuesday to go through. Yeah, so let's say it's 1:00. Let's say 2:30. I'm going to end the stream and I'll set up a whole new stream to start Tuesday's court, and I'll be back. We'll do that. We'll start at like 2:30. I have a couple of things that I need to finish up here and have some lunch. So 2:30 should be good to restart. So that gives you guys some time to chill and breathe. But I am enjoying covering court. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I will be back at 2:30 with Tuesday court, and then we'll only be one day behind. Okay. All right. See you guys later. Bye.